Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting of Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting of Monday, September 9th, 2024. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. Hello. Hello. Yeah, I'm Mayor Kurt Wilson and incognito, trying not to be heard. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Council Member Sarah Beeson, Council Member Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilmember William Mortland, and Pro Tem William Mortland, and Councilmember Alan Sells. At this time, I'll now turn the meeting over to our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.770 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of City Council meetings are to hear directly from residents on the items listed on the agenda. Residents are at the top of the organizational chart of the City of Roswell. Therefore, public comments and questions are essential for Mayor and Council to incorporate as they contemplate each decision. If you would like to speak on an item, we ask that you fill out a comment card, which are located at the back of the room in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. We ask that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which should be and is reflective of this great community. With respect to the proceedings, we ask that attention is given to the person speaking, and if it is necessary for anyone to have an independent conversation, we respectfully request you exit the rear doors to the council chambers to the vestibule area. In addition, we ask that you silence any electronic devices at this time. The mayor is the presiding officer of the meeting this evening and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decisions by the elected body. We encourage everyone in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. And we also encourage you to review and participate in various activities offered in the city of Roswell, which you can find at roswell365.com. There are a number of events and upcoming in the city of Roswell which promote community, leisure, physical activity, as we all make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. I noticed you have a new gavel. Very nice, very handsome. I should be showing this off. Now, it's not quite as big as mine. I don't know why, but it's much more pretty.
I'm not authorized to use it.
I think you should be using that. All right, well, thank you, Randy, as always. At this time, we're honored to have the Reverend Marion Brown with Roswell United Methodist Church to join us tonight to lead us in the invocation and moment of silence.
Please join me in a moment of prayer. Holy and gracious Lord, thank you for this day and now for this evening. As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the people, for the emails, the phone calls, the technology, and all of the planning that went into getting us here. But now infuse this meeting with an equal blend of logic and compassion, with wisdom and forgiveness. And may our city leaders be not led by their own needs, but of the greater concern of our neighbors. Direct conversation so that decisions are not made in haste, but with mindfulness. And whatever divisions and disagreements may happen, may they not make permanent lines, but rather may they be used to make our community stronger. And keep safe not only our council members, but also all of our first responders. And when our work is done here tonight, may you take us all to our respective homes for a good rest, so we may be ready for all that will be tomorrow. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Brown. And Reverend Brown asked me to remind you that if you're looking for a church home, no better place than Roswell United Methodist, one of the great bastions of worship in our great city. At this time, I have the great privilege and honor of asking United States Army Sergeant First Class Kevin Whalen to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sergeant Whalen. I'm going to ask you to stay right there as I ask the council to come down for the first item under the mayor's report, which is the reading of a proclamation for the Esteemed Veteran of Roswell Award. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Sergeant First Class Kevin Whalen, Esteemed Veteran of Roswell. Whereas Sergeant First Class Kevin Whalen, a distinguished resident of Roswell, Georgia, answered the call of duty in the aftermath of the tragic events of September 11th, 2001, at the age of 28, leaving behind a career in the IT industry to serve his country. Whereas Sergeant Whalen enlisted in the United States Army, scoring exceptionally well on the ASVAB and being selected as a candidate for the prestigious 18X Special Forces program, an opportunity that allowed him to train for the elite Army Green Berets. And whereas Sergeant Whalen completed his basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, followed by rigorous infantry and airborne training, and successfully passed the Special Forces assessment and selection to qualify for the Special Forces qualification course at Fort Bragg. And whereas upon completing the Q course, Sergeant Whalen was assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where he demonstrated exceptional bravery and dedication during seven frontline combat deployments between 2005 and 2012, including missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Lebanon. Whereas Sergeant Whalen received specialized training in Arabic language, wartime survival, advanced urban combat, mobile force protection, advanced special operations techniques, and asset validation, equipping him to excel in complex and high-stakes environments. And whereas despite facing the dangers and challenges of military service, Sergeant Whalen consistently performed his duties with honor and distinction, contributing to the success of numerous operations and providing invaluable support to joint agency programs. And whereas after sustaining a spine injury and a parachute accident, Sergeant Whalen was medically retired in 2014 with the rank of Sergeant First Class, holding the title of Special Forces Intelligence Sergeant. And whereas following his retirement, Sergeant Whalen continued to serve his country by becoming a civilian instructor, imparting his knowledge and expertise to active duty special operations troops, thereby shaping the future of America's elite forces. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, Georgia, do hereby name Sergeant First Class Kevin Whalen, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and extend our deepest gratitude and admiration for his service and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who serve in the United States Armed Forces. Congratulations, sir. Would you bless us with a few words?
Sure. Oh, a second. This is a Green Beret. Very few people know what it really takes to get one of these things. It's almost 3 years of some of the most intense training the U.S. military has to offer. They take away our sleep, they take away our freedom, they put us in all sorts of high stress situations. When we go to survival school, we get thrown into simulated prisoner of war camps. It's the only course in the U.S. military where they are allowed to beat us and torture us. I got waterboarded as part of my training. The crest on this hat has three components to it. The crossed arrows symbolize the heritage we draw from the Indian scouts that served with the U.S. Army in the 1800s. The dagger represents the unconventional nature of what it is that we do. But the scroll on the bottom bears the words De oppresso liber, Latin for to free the oppressed. These words are in the signature block of every Special Forces NCO and officer. It is our commitment to free the oppressed everywhere we go and everywhere we do. Now, the wars in which I fought, Afghanistan and Iraq, the narratives have been re-examined, looked at, dissected with the benefit of hindsight. But I can tell you from my experience and the men that I fought with, that every single time we deployed, we took these words to heart and did everything we could to increase the freedom everywhere that we went. And I can say that we did that because, unlike most military units, we don't sit behind the wire. We don't sit on big bases. We go out and we live amongst the locals. We have to learn the language of the culture that we go into. We have to live with the locals that we fight alongside with, because they join us on every they join us on every operation that we go into. I have gone to their houses, I have eaten at their tables, I've been in their weddings, I've held their children. And when the call came, they rode in the Humvees next to us, they went through the door with us, and when the bullets flew and the bombs fell, they were right there beside us. And we don't talk about these locals who fought with us the way that we do here. 20,000 Iraqis died fighting alongside us, 60,000 Afghanis. And they never got the benefit of ceremonies in hometowns. They never got remembrances, they never got ceremonies. They didn't even get a scroll on the bottom of a TV screen. But they were my brothers in many ways just as much as the Americans. And we lost a lot of Americans too. At Fort Campbell, Kentucky, in the 5th Group compound, there's a field where they plant a tree for every Special Forces soldier who fell. When I got there in 2005, just 3 years after the War on Terror started, there were a dozen trees already there. When I left in 2014, that number had doubled. When I went back last year to train the next generation of Special Forces soldiers, that number had doubled again. In that number was one of my good friends, Chief Warrant Officer John Farmer. I served 3 years on a team with that man, and he was the last Green Beret to officially die in the global War on Terror. I bring all this up because I was thinking about what I was going to say here, and I kept coming back to the show Band of Brothers. And as my girlfriend will attest, if you watch that show with me, it very quickly turns into story time with Kevin. Every single one of those episodes has something in it that I can personally identify with. But I'm not coming up here to tell those stories. If you want them, you might find me at Loyal Tavern on Canton Street on a regular basis. Big shout out to those guys. But I bring it up because there's the last scene in that series where they're interviewing Major Richard Winters, who was the commander of Easy Company and later 2nd Battalion, 506 Parachute Infantry. That man, if you haven't seen the show, I can tell you that that man, for what he did in World War II, is a legend in the U.S. military to this day. He is by very definition a hero. But he tells the story of his grandson asking him if he was a hero in the war. And Richard Winters said, Grandpa said no, but I served in a company of heroes. And that's what I wanted to say here today. I was just a guy who did a job. I did the job the government sent me overseas to do. And that's all I did. but I had the honor of serving in a group of heroes. And I'm accepting this reward on their behalf. God bless. Deo Presso Liber.
Well done. Well done. You guys want to come on?
Yeah, y'all more than welcome. Your whole group can come out.
Get the whole family up here.
Yeah. Get one with you and then get everybody. We got plenty of folks taking pictures. Come on, we don't bite on this side. We're the nice people. Too high behind me. I know I'm tall.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class.
Great words. It was awesome. Well done. Thank you, Kevin and family. We're honored you're with us tonight, and thank you for your service. Next on the mayor's report is a list of upcoming events in the city of Roswell. I am going to ask my colleague Lee Hills to take us down that path. Lee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As always, I want to remind you where you can find all sorts of great information on what's coming up, what's fun and hot to do in the city of Roswell at roswell365.com. If you have an event that you'd like to advertise throughout our city and really beyond the city limits here, you can register for a free account and then post your event for your nonprofit, your place of worship, a neighborhood event, a school, anything like that, and then that can be visible to anyone searching up what's going on for your particular event. I also want to bring you a whole flurry of activities coming up. As Sergeant First Class Whalen just mentioned to us, September 11th is pretty imminent right now. So this week, Wednesday, we will have here at City Hall on the City Hall steps a 9/11 commemorative ceremony. It'll start at 8:30. Come on at 8:15. It's rain or shine. I will say again, it's rain or shine on the front steps of City Hall. It's not a very lengthy event, but it's a very meaningful event. And bring a friend, tell your friends, but we would love to see you there, and it's very important that we recognize that yet again this year. Wednesday, September 11th at 8:30. Come on at 8:15. We'd love to see you there. Also want to share a lot of fun things to spark your creative side or your listening side. Saturday, September the 14th, Martha Redbone is going to be at the Cultural Arts Center. This is the Bone Hill Concert, and I can't wait to go to this. I got tickets some time ago. This is much more than a concert. This musical theater project, performed in concert style like Les Mis on PBS, reflects recording artist Martha Redbone's influences of bluegrass, blues, country, gospel, jazz, rock and roll, and R&B. It's the epic story of one woman's return to her homeland on Black Mountain and the coal mines of Harlan County, Kentucky, spanning the stories of 4 generations of women in a southeastern indigenous family. You can get those tickets and more information on roswell365.com. Also, September 15th, which is Sunday, we have Sundays in the Park. This is a free outdoor concert held at Riverside Park in Town Square on select Sundays, May through October. So we've got 2 more left. This is, let's see, light classics and modern big band jazz featuring the dynamic talent of the Cool Blue Jazz Band and vocalist infused with a Latin flair. Very special guest of the evening is the Staying Alive dance crew, fresh off their appearance on Good Morning America. This extraordinary dance ensemble will grace the stage with sensational synchronized choreography. Then we have Alive in Roswell. We're closing out that season, so you have 2 more chances to participate in the best festival in the Southeast. That is Thursday, next Thursday, September the 19th. That's a week out. Not this week, next. Alive in Roswell is a free monthly festival featuring food trucks, music, interactive vendors, and participation from the many surrounding boutiques, small businesses, and restaurants. Saturday, September 21st, we have a lot going on. We have the Roswell Day of Hope, Saturday, September 21st, from noon until 4, right here on City Hall grounds. Hope Roswell will host the 15th annual Roswell Day of Hope event. Food trucks, live music, and family games will be a great way to enjoy the afternoon. With mental health on the minds of many people as our community copes with depression, anxiety, and more, come learn how to recognize the signs and you'll be given information and helpful resources. You can also enter to win a $100 gift card, and there'll be resources for free shoes or groceries for families in need, and doctors and nurses will be on site for those needing a checkup. Also on Saturday, September 21st, is KRB Rivers Alive. That's Keep Roswell Beautiful. This is a cleanup event focused around our waterways, around the city of Roswell. I've participated in this many times, and I'm looking to recapture my win from a few years ago of collecting the most garbage with my team. But this is a great way to get dirty and clean up Roswell. Don't wear anything fun and sexy and white. You need to come ready to work. But you'll be put on a team and then sent to a specific area and then pick up as much as you can, gather, put trash bags. I have been with many of my colleagues up here, and we look a lot scarier at the end of that, but much more proud. So you can find out more about that on Roswell 365. That is Rivers Alive, hosted by Keep Roswell Beautiful. And then also on September 21st and 22nd, we have the 58th Annual Roswell Arts Festival, and that's right here at City Hall from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's Saturday and Sunday, September 21st and 22nd. The proceeds benefit parks and recreation programs throughout Roswell, featuring more than 100 artists, live entertainment, children's activities, food trucks, the works. You can also spend a little money on locally made wares and fun things. The festival, formerly held on Roswell Square, has moved to City Hall, and I can tell you it's a great space, being very shaded, and the vendors, I don't know how they work it out, but there's always a cool breeze for this event. Then finally, Roswell Riverside Sounds. This is every 4th Saturday, April through September, so this is it. This is the last one. This is Roswell's longest running free outdoor concert series, and it highlights various musical genres and original artists. Bring your chairs, blankets, and a friend and enjoy this laid-back environment along the Chattahoochee River. Closing out this season on September 28th is the electrifying Diego Garcia, a.k.a. Twangero, described as Spain's king of twang. Known for his remarkable adaptability and unique sound, this recipient of the 2013 Latin Grammy Awards offers an enthralling blend of classical, Spanish guitar, Latin beats, country, rockabilly, and jazz. So if there is anything that you missed there on that detailed list, please go to roswell365.com and search by date or search by what you're looking for a concert, and we hope to see you out and about in Roswell. Thank you very much, Mayor. Back to you.
Thank you, Lee. Well done, as
Yes, sir.
always. All right, that concludes the mayor's report for this evening's meeting. Next is the consent agenda. Does council have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Being that there are none, do any Roswell residents have any comments on the consent agenda? Bring it back to council. Any final comments or thoughts? Being that there are none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Will Morthland, seconded by Councilmember David Johnson. By show of hands, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the consent agenda passes tonight unanimously 6-0. Thank you very much. Next on this evening is the regular agenda. The first item is under Administration and Governance under our liaison, Councilmember Christine Hall. Councilmember Hall, would you read the first item under Administration, please?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Item number 1, approval of a text amendment of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 1, Animal Control, Section 10.1, Tethering of Dogs. This is the first reading and will be presented by our attorney, David Davidson.
Thank you, Christine. David, would you read the ordinance and present the item, please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 1, Animal Control, Section 10.1, Tethering of Dogs. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 1, Animal Control, Section 10.1, Tethering of Dogs of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting said article and replacing it with a new article 10.1, Tethering of Dogs, which shall read as shown in Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. And if approved, this would be the first reading of the ordinance.
Thank you, David. Does council have any questions or comments on this item? Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. And we will have some comments from the Georgia Pet Coalition during the Roswell resident portion of the meeting. So I'll leave it to that.
Councilmember Beeson? Any other council members? Thank you very much. Any Roswell residents that would like to address this item? All right, at this time, I'll ask the Christine's guest. Christine, would you do the introduction, please?
Thank you. This is Peggy McCarthy, who is also a Roswell resident, who is a volunteer with the Georgia Pet Coalition, who has helped us with the tethering ordinance, which I believe was passed by the city in 2018. And this is just a cleanup of some language, some conflicting language, and bringing it in line more with county. And she'll speak to that a little bit.
Thanks, Christine. Welcome, Peggy.
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak today. The intent of this amendment was primarily to clarify what attended tethering means, because there was a definition of unattended in the definitions, and then in the ordinance itself, it referred to attended, and they didn't line up. And so the new definition, attended, means in the immediate physical presence and line of sight of a responsible and competent individual. And I'd like to comment on why this distinction is important, why we need to have this definition of attended tethering, and it's a public safety issue. Unattended tethering poses a significant safety risk to communities. A tether is a form of restraint, but does not provide a complete barrier like a fence or other structure or other enclosure for a dog. So a tether is a form of restraint. It's not a complete barrier between a person and a dog, or another animal and a dog. Because of that, people and animals can intentionally or unintentionally come into contact with a tethered dog. Tethering contributes to fear, stress, and resource guarding with dogs, thus potentially triggering a fight or flight response that may result in a bite. Animal behaviorists, veterinarians, and animal welfare advocates acknowledge that continuously tethered, unsupervised dogs are often frustrated, unsocialized, and have an increased potential to bite or attack people. State Farm Insurance has cautioned that dogs should be supervised at all times by a competent adult, and children should never be left alone with any dog, including in the family home or yard. And there's examples recently, this past week, where a child was killed within the home by the family dog. In a well-known study, a veterinarian examined 256 fatal dog bite attacks to identify contributing factors. The most striking finding was the lack of supervision of the dog in nearly all fatalities. 87% of the dogs were unsupervised at the time of the fatal attack, meaning there was no able-bodied person present with the dog who could have intervened. This factor is important, as children under the age of 5 made up almost half the victims in this study, showing that this group is especially vulnerable. And on a side note, 83% of these dogs were unaltered, and therefore also are reproducing and causing our overpopulation in our community. The Centers for Disease Control advises against keeping a dog tied up outside because of the greater likelihood of dog bites. And they recommend that dogs be confined behind a fence to protect them from wild animals and reduce the risk of interacting with strangers. Multiple counties in Georgia have passed ordinances prohibiting the unattended tethering of dogs with favorable results. These counties are Athens-Clarke, Barrow County, where it was passed after a teenager was severely mauled by a tethered dog that got loose, Cherokee County, Cobb, Floyd, Forsyth, Gwinnett, Hall, Newton, Oconee, and Walton all have this type of ordinance. So, thank you.
Peggy, thank you so much. I appreciate your informing us on this issue. All right, at this time, I'll bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments. Being that there are none, Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. Motion to approve number 1, the first reading of the approval of the text amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 1, Animal Control, Section 10.1, Tethering of Dogs.
First reading. Thank you, Christine. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor of passing this motion by show of hands, please raise your hands. Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much. The second item is also underneath administration. Councilmember Hall, would you read the second item, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Item number 2, approval of a text amendment of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to add a new section 8.1.25, prohibition of transient sales of dogs, cats, and domestic rabbits. This is the first reading, will be presented by our attorney, David Davidson.
Thanks, Christine. David, would you read the ordinance and present the item, please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 1, Animal Control, Section 25, Prohibition of Sales of Dogs, Cats, and Domestic Rabbits. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 1, Animal Control, Section 25, Reserved of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting said article and replacing said article with a new Article 25, Prohibition on Sales of Dogs, Cats, and Domestic Rabbits, which shall read as shown in Exhibit A, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. And if approved, this is the first reading.
Thank you, David, very much. Does council have any questions or comments on this matter? Christine?
I would like to ask Ms. McCarthy to come up again and maybe inform us a little bit about this ordinance that that I've personally witnessed occur here in our city of Roswell.
Can you bear with me 1 second? Peggy, let me ask the public if they want to speak first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Are there any Roswell residents that would like to address this item? Being that there are none? Peggy, come on up. Sorry. Forgive me.
And so for the audience, this is in reference to sales of dogs, cats, and rabbits that occur in parking lots, flea markets, street side, just different spaces. And these are transient sellers. They're here today, gone tomorrow. You can't find them. They often misrepresent the animal they're selling. They're often underage, or they're very frequently sick. These are breeders who strictly are out for profit. They are not responsible breeders. Good breeders don't sell in parking lots. They don't want impulse buyers. They want thoughtful buyers, and they often allow them to come to their homes or a vet office, or this ordinance allows even a police station. Someone selling a box of puppies in a Walmart parking lot, you're going to often find a sick animal there. And Mayor Wilson had asked me at the work session the connection between transient pet sales and various forms of trafficking, drug, human trafficking, weapons trafficking, and gangs. There's a subset within these transient sales that gangs take advantage of, because this is all about evasion, and they pull up with a pickup truck in a parking lot. But there is a direct and indirect association of transient sales of large muscular bully breeds that are involved with gang activity. Dogs are used for several reasons. They're used for status by gangs. It's part of the machismo there. They are used for drug houses, for guarding. And so, in a sense, the relationship to human trafficking is that these dogs become part of a criminal culture, part of a criminal operation. And human trafficking has become more prevalent within gangs. The U.S. Department of Justice has said that gangs have become increasingly involved in human trafficking. And the dogs are part of this culture and operation. So it's more of an indirect, but when it comes, oh, and then I didn't mention dog fighting as well. Very directly involved in dog fighting. And so your acceptance of this ordinance helps, helps mitigate some of this activity.
Peggy, thank you. Peggy, do you have a website, or anybody would like to get in touch with you to assist you in any shape, manner, or form on the work you all are doing? Do you have a website or a?
Yes, we have a Facebook page. We're an all-volunteer board, Georgia Pet Coalition. We're on Facebook, and we have a website as well. And so we work on local ordinances as well as state ordinances. Representative Scott Hilton was a co-sponsor of this ordinance. It was actually a state bill, and then Representative Joseph Gullett from Paulding County was there. And I will say too, this is important, the AKC is on the state level has endorsed this endorsed this on the state level.
What is your website, Peggy? So can you share with everybody?
Georgia GA Pet Coalition.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work. Does council have any additional comments, thoughts, or questions on this matter? Christine, you got any follow-up comments?
No, I would just like to thank Peggy and her team for the work. And we did not mention here at this meeting, but there's roughly about 13, I think, cities and counties that have already adopted this, and this will be in front of the state come January at the next session. So we hope to adopt this at a state level and not just push them out of our city to the neighboring city, but basically at a state level.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Peggy. Any additional thoughts, comments, or questions from council? If not so, I will ask Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I have one clarifying question, and Councilmember Beeson brought this up at our meeting. If the ordinance language includes the word transient in the prohibition on the transient sales of dogs, cats.
Yes, ma'am.
That's on me. Looking through it now, that was what I was getting ready to ask earlier. I was jumping the gun on it. She's referring to the resolution language where it says that the new Article 25 shall read prohibition on sales of dogs, cats, and domestic rabbits, which will be shown as Exhibit A. Looking at Exhibit A, the title of this is Prohibition on Transient Sales of Dogs, Cats, and Domestic Rabbits. My question during committee was if that language is supposed to match. This may be a question for the city attorney. Is it because it's 8.1.25, not just the entirety of Section 25, that it's transient and not just the sales of dogs, cats, and rabbits? Or does that word transient need to be included in the resolution wording itself?
Transient needs to be included in it.
Oh, that I wasn't wrong the first time. Okay, so that was a typo that I think was mentioned during committee, and for the sake of including it during the resolution, thank you to Councilmember Hall for remembering that and catching that it was not included. For subsection 1, third line down, the new Article 25 should have the word transient in those quotation marks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
So that would be my motion, to include the word transient in this section.
David, you got that? Okay, very good. So there's been a motion by Councilmember Hall with one revision of adding the word transient in Section 8.21.25. I believe it is A1. Is that correct? Very good. All right. Motion made by Councilmember Hall. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember David Johnson. All in favor of passing this motion, please raise your show by show of hands. Please raise your hands. Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations. That's the first reading. All right. We have, let's see, one more item underneath Administration and Governance, and that is, Christine, yours as well. Would you please read the last item under the administration?
Yes, sir. Item number 3, approval of a text amendment of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to Section 14.2.4, 17, activities prohibited in parks and public places, Old Mill Park. This is the first reading presented by our attorney, David Davidson.
Thank you very much, Christine. Dave, would you read the ordinance, please, sir, and present the item?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 14, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, Article 2, Regulation of Use of Public Parks, Section 4, Subsection 17, Activities Prohibited in Parks and Public Places of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 14, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, Article 2, Regulation of Use of Public Parks, Section 4, Subsection 17, Activities Prohibited in Parks and Public Places of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting said article and replacing said article with the new Article 14.2.4, Subsection 17, Activities Prohibited in Parks and Public Places, which shall read as shown in Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. And if approved, this would be the first reading.
Thank you, David, very much. Does council have any questions or comments on this particular text amendment? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor. This has come about due to the overuse of Old Mill Park. If you haven't visited there in a while, you should go take a spin. It's better than it was about 3 weeks ago, but we're heading into a down season, and we've started to address some of the degradation that's been going on there for years. I've lived here 22 years, and I've been going there for at least 15, and this isn't new, but it's absolutely gotten worse. The volume of traffic, and I don't mean speeders, the volume of numbers of visitors to that park has way exceeded the capacity of what that park, that precious park, can hold. We've had all sorts of, I'll say, vandalism with folks walking across the dam. We've had folks climbing the dam face at Vickery Mill Park, Old Mill Park, and pulling out rocks while climbing up and throwing them down below. So there's 2 strikes there. We've got one, degradation of a historic site in our city, one that our city was founded on, being the river dammed up for the mill, and 2, posing a safety risk for anybody swimming below. In addition to that, I hate to make it about me, but I'll use myself as an example because I can tell you this isn't just something I'm talking about. I've actually experienced it. After the first visit that when I took my kids down there, plus 4 nephews, 15 years ago, and I have pictures to prove it, I started taking at least 2 trash bags, and then the third visit was 3 trash bags so that I could pick up garbage while my kids were I made them wear water shoes or Tevas or Chacos or whatever because of the glass that was broken down there all over the rocks, in the water. I have seen needles there, not recently, people smoking dope, scantily clad young ladies and men, garbage beyond control. And I'm not talking about takeout from downtown Roswell. I'm talking about crackers and cans, 12 packs of beer, diapers. I have not personally seen the diapers, but I've seen plenty of pictures of those. And then lots of people taking pictures with huge, heavy equipment as far as what a professional photographer or videographer would use. And I don't believe they've been using the $100 permit that's required to take pictures on our property here in the city. So because of this overuse, the parking has exceeded what the desired use is for that park, spilling uphill into the mill or the MIMS property, and then further even into the Mill Village, our most historic neighborhood in the city of Roswell. So the mayor charged several of us with putting together a working group to really sample and come up with some solid solutions on how we could save this park and also restore it back to park use. It's very difficult to manage there with the amount of garbage, and the way we have for years and years been addressing it is to clean up more and clean up more and clean up more. which I believe is what a good parent would never do, and that's to reward bad behavior. So the littering has continued, and certainly a massive uptick since COVID. The blatant misuse, even though there's signs there of walking across the dam, blatant safety impositions on others while there, not to mention oneself. Not me, but I've witnessed others, and plenty of people have. So what we did, we had 3 council members, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Morthland, and I got together with 3 residents who will remain unnamed, 2 that live in the Mill Village and 1 that does not, and is familiar with our parks, and then 3 staff members, which is Deputy City Attorney Cusack, we had HR Director Warren, and Parks and Rec Deputy Director Smith. So we got together for, I think, 7 weeks and really brainstormed out how to address this. So this evening, what we're posing is to make it unavailable, where we outlaw the possibility of taking coolers down to the park. We already have gotten the no alcohol in the park handled on the, if you're not familiar with the space, the National Park System is on the other side of Vickery Creek. And it was an act of God, I believe, that our Recreation and Parks Department worked with National Parks. I think Councilmember Morthland and I started meeting with a group 18 months ago, working on that to forbid alcohol on the national park side. We already have that stated for our parks, other than some exceptions when we have concerts and that sort of thing where it's allowed, special use. And then to make it unlawful to enter the waterway. We find that the majority of the malfeasance is occurring when people are getting in the water. I've personally seen coolers bigger than what I could carry sitting in the middle of the creek, and I've watched things flow out of the cooler while people, these are grown-ups sitting there. And then just to really put a kibosh on the misuse and the degradation of that park. So this evening, we've got an ordinance pulled together for that what am I trying to say? To put into place two restrictions, yes, that supersede any existing rules or lack thereof at this park. This doesn't impact any other park, just that one. And I'm proud to be part of this group, and I'm really concerned with what's going to happen to this if we don't protect this area. Going forward, we'll talk about parking, but that's not tonight. Just tonight, we want to get started with this to hopefully prevent any further damage at the park. And that's what I have for the moment, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee, David, and Will, for your service on the working group, as well as Linda and Taylor and Joe and 3 unnamed residents who we protect their identity for obvious reasons. Other council members that would like to address this item. Councilmember Beeson.
Sure, I have 3 questions, actually, as follow-up from the last meeting. I appreciate Councilmember Hills, Councilmember Johnson, and Councilmember Morthland for taking the lead on this and meeting with residents. I know it's been ongoing meetings. I also appreciate the staff members and the residents who took the time to be able to participate in these meetings and provide feedback and suggestions as well. That said, I do have a question of the recap of the members of the task force who represented staff. I do have a question, and I'm not sure if it's directed towards the mayor or if the city administrator, in terms of who assembled the task force or selected the members from staff. Why a representative from internal HR was prioritized as opposed to a representative from police, since police, we have 4 officers down there on the weekends. Police is left to enforce these new ordinances. So just wondering why HR was prioritized over police.
So it's definitely a question for me, since I put together the working group. And I put together 3 council members and 3 people I thought from the city staff that I thought would be that would be a great part of the working group. I'm well familiar with the police position. Spent a lot of time working with the police on this. I really didn't need to be informed by the police, because I already had clarity on what the police's position was, and that really wasn't. I really wasn't looking for someone to bring their particular perspectives of working in it. I wanted people kind of from the outside who were maybe familiar with it, but not intimately familiar with it, to get into it, think out of the box, and start addressing it from maybe ways we hadn't thought about before. And that's really why, because I think director of HR to me could have been director of VPW, you know. It really was just, hey, he's just a capable person who can think out of the box and work great with others. And so really, it was, Taylor just got the bad luck of the draw, being in Parks and Rec. It really wasn't, you know, because Taylor was in Parks and Rec. It was just bad luck of the draw. Same with Joe, being a new assistant city attorney. You know what I mean? It was more about, you know, hey.
Hazing for you?
Yeah, it was more of a hazing thing. But it's a great question. Like, why do you pick police and just parks? Because honestly, I already knew the parks position and I already knew the police position. And I can't tell you why Taylor got picked other than he was like, seemed like a good candidate.
No, I think that makes sense in terms of that rationale, but I think that also begs my follow-up question. Of the 3 residents that were selected, 2 of the residents were those that we had already heard from quite frequently and live adjacent to the property. They would have quite arguably a vested interest.
Sorry
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I would say one of them was, and I did not know that person, so that person was unknown to me, but certainly did have a very strong perspective to your point. And as you're well familiar, being familiar with this issue for the last 18 months, maybe 2 years, really 2 years, we've heard from many, many, many residents down there. And that was a recommendation. The other resident that lived in the mill, I've known for too long to count, and somebody I trust, and probably one of the most level-headed, reasonable people that I know. So for me, that person was an easy pick because I just trust their judgment and didn't see them having a bent. And having over the last 24 months, having as much contact as we've had from people in the mill, this one particular person that was a friend of mine who does live in the mill has been very intentional about not reaching out and trying to work inside of the existing system for solutions. So I trusted his perspective, but to your point, he did live in the mill.
Right. I guess my concern is some of the feedback I received from parents and families over the last 2 weeks since we previously had this committee meeting was parents who frequent the falls and asked if they had any representation on the task force related to those who frequent the park property but might not live nearby, those who do play in the falls, those whose families enjoy the falls for what they are. One person who reached out to me said that they've been visiting the falls frequently for over a decade and were concerned that they didn't have representation in the task force, which is why I ask that question.
Well, I think it's a fair question. And the third person I would say probably would be the best representation of any person I could think of based upon her experience with our Parks and Recs program over the years and her leadership in it, and who does not live in the mill, and who I felt truly didn't have any bent on the issue, and probably kind of like you and Christine and Will and David and Alan and Lee and me, we all have been, our families have all experienced the mill and have all gone to the mill. So I feel like we are representing, those voices are represented. That would be my perspective.
Yep, last and final question. I'll leave you alone this time. This one is a question for City Administrator Ray.
I'm going to jump in it anyway, Sarah.
You go for it. The question I had asked in committee originally was I had requested if we could get an engineering report regarding the alleged damage to the dam or any erosion issues, which were what was referenced in the committee meeting for some necessary means for putting these changes in place. And I was just wondering if we had any follow-up, because I didn't see any items, if we had any reports available. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Christine?
I just wanted to add in, you had mentioned the last 18 months being the problem being brought up to us over the last 18 months. It's actually been much longer because I am in my 5th term, I'm sorry, 5th year of my 2nd term. And one of the first things when I was elected, Councilmember Palermo, I, and another council member were working to try and put together a task force, and did put together a task force to try and solve and look into those issues 5 years ago. So this has been ongoing, and it's just exacerbated to the point of, I mean, to this devastating point.
Thanks, Christine. Lee, yes, ma'am.
Two follow-ups on that. As far as the two residents that were selected, what I just described is just a tiny speck on what I've experienced and seen. And when I say those things, I'm sure there's somebody listening, or you may be here tonight going, there's no way that's really going on. And it was really important for us to have two people that live in two different areas. While the Mill Village is teeny regarding, the comparison to this whole city, it's got enough space there that you may never see your neighbor that's just down the street. So it was really important to have two different perspectives that were reporting real time, that could actually walk out their door and take pictures of all of the out-of-state and out-of-town parking license plates that were parking in front of, all throughout the Mill Village and in the Mill area. That it wasn't done in a salacious way. It was just reporting in what was going on as it was happening. And I've been with Councilmember Morthland, I've been with Councilmember Hall, and I feel like somebody else. And I've been several times with just friends, and I've taken a spin through there on a Saturday afternoon, a Sunday afternoon, and it's been wide open. Since we've started this, the last 3 or 4 weeks, I have not walked down to the waterfront. I've left that to our authorities and our park professionals. The other thing, and Director Malone, forgive me for putting you on the spot, of Rec and Parks, I believe dam inspections are already on they're already on the docket, so that's already been put into place. So to address Councilmember Beeson's a question about environmental or the safety, that was put into place maybe a month ago, maybe longer, but at least that is in play. So that's all I wanted to add now.
Thanks, Lee. Ellen? Yes, sir. Councilmember, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm reading through this list of the recommendations, and thank the council members and the citizens and the staff who took the time to do this. I certainly didn't take the time, so I've heard what they said in the committee meetings and in conversations, so they worked hard on this. But I'm looking down through this list. Is there something that troubles the gentle lady, shall we say? Are you for the excrement left by pets, or what is it exactly that you wish to change?
I'm so glad you asked me, Councilmember Sells. You're stealing my thunder here. I was going to save it for after we came back from the public, but since you so want to hear, I believe that these are duplications in terms of our code. So it's not that I necessarily support littering in our natural spaces. Littering is already illegal. Coolers aren't necessarily going to inherently address that, because I'm a parent. Your girl loves a good backpack. I would just put exactly what I would put in a cooler and a backpack and cruise back on down to the creek side. As for the entering the water, it is asinine at best to try to enforce accessibility from the city side when anybody can access it from the national park side. I've reviewed several pictures and footage over the last 3 weeks since these changes were implemented, where there's nothing short of 20 to 30 people who are still hanging out in the water because they accessed it from the national park side. I believe that these are changes that can be best addressed, as mentioned during the committee meeting, through implementing parking changes. Right now, it's a free-for-all with parking. Everyone and their mom can park on top of each other. They can make up parking spaces. Not only do they fill the existing parking lot with, Councilmember Hills, I believe you said 70 parking spaces during committee? Yeah, so 70 parking spaces, as opposed to enforcing, okay, well, now the parking lot is full, and we can have some designated street parking places for the businesses in the area with designated lines, and the rest of the signs can say no street parking unless in designated areas. Right now, people are blocking driveways, they're lining the streets. It limits our ability for us to be able to get first responders down there. So I would rather address it from a parking first approach. To me, it seems more common sense and much easier to enforce. I also believe that these changes beg some questions for law enforcement for how their enforceability. I know that in here it says we're defining the cooler as any container used to store, hold, or keep refrigerated beverages. But if I want to bring backpack trash down there, I can do just the same. They would be limiting or enforcing it the same way they would be limiting or enforcing our littering ordinance. Alcohol is also illegal per our ordinance. So these are all ways that we can address it. But most importantly, I think my biggest takeaway from our committee meeting when we had this discussion originally was that it was said by several council members that these were changes that we were implementing to limit how long people hang out at a park. And it could be the city planner and me, but it is wild to me to want to limit how much the public can enjoy a park period because of limiting things like refreshments. I understand, again, you're trying to limit the trash or its overuse within the park spaces. Y'all, I'm sitting here staring at the mill in this logo. This is the Roswell, Georgia logo. That is the mill. Every single picture that Visit Roswell puts out, which is our tourism board, their entire wall in Visit Roswell is a picture of the Mill Falls. For us to sit here on the dais and be like, wow, man, how did we get to be so popular with our mill and our falls? We advertise it nonstop. And then we wonder why when people come to Roswell, the first thing they think of or they want to visit is our falls themselves. Without proof of any damage to the environment itself, proof of any damage to the falls themselves, I feel like we are jumping the gun and limiting people to access public spaces in nature such as water. And I believe that it doesn't address any public safety concerns because 9 times out of 10 when we see the calls that come into 911 regarding someone who has fallen at the mill, it's not because they were falling off the rocks, they weren't scaling the falls themselves, it's because they were trying to cross the water. We're not limiting them crossing the water because 9 times out of 10, they came from the national park side and they bust their behind on the rocks. I'm not judging. I would also fall in the rocks. I'm not overly coordinated. However, we're trying to say that we're addressing those safety concerns. We're not addressing anything. We're putting 2 things in place that I think are overreaching in terms of how we should be treating our public spaces, and I don't think that it's inherently going to address the concerns that council believes that it will. So, long answer, but you asked. So there's your answer.
Thank you, Sarah. David, Councilmember Johnson.
I'll wait till public.
Are you going to wait? Oh, come on, David. All right. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council before I ask Roswell residents? All right, thank you. All right, this time, are there any Roswell residents that would like to speak on this item? Welcome, how are you?
Great. Filled out my card for a different item, so I don't know if I need a second one. But my name is Mark Beal, live at 215 Spring Drive, which is just behind Barrington Hall, very close to the mill. Lived there since 2013. It's where we call home. We're now in our 2nd house on the same street. We love it. We can walk to the mill from where we are. Walk to the coffee shop, walk to the square, do it all. So I think the spirit of this is well-intentioned. Councilmember Hills, there is litter out there. It can be dangerous and all of that. But some of the earliest pictures I have on my phone from living in Roswell is me throwing the ball in that creek with my dog. Me taking my boys down to that creek, letting them run around in it. Me going in it myself. So it's a challenge when we talk about overcrowding. I think to your point, Ms. Beeson, how do you control that? Or in some light, why would you want to punish that or reduce it? That's a very good and genuine question, particularly given the logo that we're looking at. So while I think it's well-intentioned, I think we really ought to consider how we're proposing to limit particularly the residents and whether they live on top of the mill and you can hear the waterfall year-round, whether they live behind Barrington Hall or whether they live up near Mountain Park or East Roswell, doesn't really matter. How are you limiting access to those public areas, despite, again, being very well-intentioned when it comes to safety, first priority, and trash and other things. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your time. Any other Roswell residents that would like to address the matter? Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to bring it back to council, and David, I'm going to start with you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments about all of this, being on the task force and spending lots and lots of time and energy on this problem, and probably will be spending lots and lots of more time and energy on this problem through the future. I bought my first house in Roswell across the street from a sand plant. I used to walk to Old Mill Park almost daily, if not, frequently, until I moved to where I live now. I used to walk with my dog. Used to do the same thing you did. my dog didn't really like the water, so we would try to throw a ball in there, and then I would have to go in and get the ball. And, you know, rest in peace, Lulu, we still love you. And, you know, so I have a very special, fond memories of this park. You know, I really love this park. Now living on the east side of Roswell, don't frequent as much. About a year ago, brought my 2 oldest kids there on a Saturday afternoon in the May-ish, and, you know, we're gonna go have a little picnic, right? So I pull in, there's no parking. Okay, that's not a big deal. So drive up, pull in, park at Sloan Street Park, walk down. It's packed, you know. And listen. I like music. I like loud music, but there's loud music, speakers, and it is just full of people. And I didn't feel comfortable as a parent having my kids there. And I said, I can't do this. So it was like, get back in the car. We went to Sloan Street Park, and, you know, they played on the swing set for like an hour and called it a day. At the end of the day, as a Roswell resident, as a parent who wants to use this park, I don't feel comfortable using this park. I don't think that's fair to the Roswell residents, right? And you know, maybe I'm wrong with this. Maybe it was just a one-time occurrence. But based on the emails and information that we get, I don't think it is. The other thing, this park is over capacity. We don't have the infrastructure in place to handle the crowds that are there. 2,000 cars a day on a Saturday go down Mill Street. 300 cars a day on a Wednesday go down that street. That's a massive increase in capacity that we just don't have the infrastructure for. I agree with Councilwoman Beeson that parking needs to be a part of the long-term solution, but it is a long-term, it's a long-acting plan. It ain't something we can fix tomorrow. This is the quickest and easiest way to try to get some control in the crowds. I'm not saying I want to limit how many people go to our park, but I want to limit the behavior or change the behavior that's happening at this park. And finally, we don't allow swimming in any other city of Roswell park. You know, except for the pool. Yeah, you know, if this was happening at Roswell Park, this building would be full tonight, full of people upset, right? The behavior that's happening down there, if that was happening at Roswell Park or East Roswell Park, I don't know if you can even swim somewhere in East Roswell Park, but if you could, yeah, this building would be full. People would be upset. It's just in a small park in a small sub area that you can't see, right? You don't see it from, you know, a major road or anything like that. And when you go there and it's packed, I mean, to me, it's embarrassing. And one final comment about the people selected. The person who is your good friend, who remain nameless. Yeah, thank you. English is hard.
It is.
That's my first language. Yeah, it's a little bit of Alabama in me. Yeah. I haven't met him until we went to this part of this task force. And I will say that I agree with you that he's one of the most level-headed human beings I've ever met in my life. And I will also say that our staff, Linda, Taylor, and Joe, there were some things we recommended, and they were like, like, no. I mean, especially Taylor. God bless him. But that was good. It was a healthy dialogue. These were good, healthy conversations. So this isn't something that we just did on a whim and said, because I know sometimes it seems that way. I won't point any fingers at who might cause that sometimes. But, this took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I think this is a good solution to see how we can change the behavior that happens at that park. And hopefully over next summer, we have a parking plan in place, and this park can get back to what it's originally used for.
Thank you, David. Yes, ma'am. Christine, Councilmember Hall.
I just want to be sure that we're clear that the trails are open in this park. So, I mean, that's basically what it's intended for, is beautiful trails that connect to the national park trails. So everybody's going to be able to enjoy the beautiful trails, and especially coming on fall, crossing from the Roswell side to the national park side. So we can certainly still enjoy the park.
Thank you, Christine. Councilor Lee, yes, ma'am.
Just can't get enough. One more thing, and thank you for that segue, Councilmember Hall. It's come to my attention that when we, through the brilliant vision of City Administrator Mr. Knighton, was able to change the use of a park without having to go through the process of what we're doing right now, just so that we could see if that would invoke any kind of change in behavior, and that was to limit the park to trail use only. And I would like, if I might, City Assistant Attorney Cusack, if you can help me with this, because we talked about this, I would like to impose an additional item to what we're doing this evening, and that's to make this where everybody has to stay on the trail in the park, and it would have the same sort of fines imposed upon that. Is that, can you help me with that? Is that, or, oh, great. Okay, well, if you'll just stand up there with me, that'd be great. Awesome. So I'd like to add item J. It shall be unlawful for any person to exit a designated marked trail in Old Mill Park, or also known as Vickery Creek Park. Any fine levied pursuant to this subjection shall be $250. Something that I'd like to point out is that right now, our police, I just like having you up here. Thank you, Joe. Is that our police officers are asking people to get back on the rocks or back on the trail. And the minute our officers turn around, I'll just say rascals. These rascals are very defiant and bold, and they're jumping right into the water. And so we're having an affront to our own police officers, and they're unable to impose a fine. And I don't know, Chief Conroy, if there's anything you want to add to that, or did I cover that well enough? Okay. So I would like to add letter J this evening to what we're putting in place, if it suits this body.
You know how I feel about additions at the dais.
I know.
I think you need to bring it up as a separate matter. I'm not in favor of moving it forward. You've got two items now. Joe, let me ask you a question, and I'll ask the city attorney as well. And Chief, can you come as well, please, sir? So I'm not familiar with J. Let me see what J is. When did this come up? This is already part of the.
No.
Offered as an amendment.
Yeah, so one question, technical question for the attorneys. This is the first reading. This could be added for the second reading, could it not?
Yes.
Very good. And then just for deliberative parts, to go ahead and start the conversation towards the second reading. Chief, in this current iteration as proposed tonight, do you need J from an enforcement perspective?
Yes, so this was at my request once I reviewed the proposed ordinance. This is a request that I came up with, spoke with Councilmember Hills about it. It helps us with the enforcement aspect of this, of issues in the park.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Joe. Don't go anywhere. Hold on just a second, if you don't mind, gentlemen. Yes, sir, David.
Would you still think you need I if we have J in place? It shall be unlawful for any person to enter the waterway from the city of Roswell area of Old Mill Park, Vickery Creek Park? Because technically, if they're entering the waterway, they're off the trail.
So I would prefer it in there. One of the issues that we were having when the rules were first enforced were people coming from the national park side into the Roswell side. It's a gray area that needs to be clarified. So they would leave crossing through the water into the Roswell trails from the river.
Does this clarify that?
Yes, sir.
With absolute clarity for the police?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so that's both I and J?
Correct.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
I got a question.
Yes, sir. Councilor Sells.
Do you have any idea, Chief, how many parking tickets, or are we issuing parking tickets? Are we enforcing the parking in this area today on the street parking and those kinds of things? Are we being aggressive about that?
Yeah, so we don't have that many illegal parking issues there, except there's an overabundance of vehicles trying to park.
Yeah, so
So, yeah,
I
we are-
thought one
we
of the
are-
issues was that they were parking in the neighborhood and along the, is that not illegal, or is that not the case?
Where they're parked illegally, they're getting cited. Most of the ones where they were parking, I think some of the complaints you've heard, it was not illegal to park where they were. There's a limited number of street parking spaces in that whole area, and when visitors were taking it up, residents had nowhere to park.
Okay, thank you.
So Councilmember Hills would like to add items I and items J. Are those available for the public to see?
No, she just wants to add a J.
Just J, just item J. Is it available for the public to see by any chance? It is? It's the only copy you have? You have another copy because it needs to be read.
Mayor?
Yeah, you can read it up there. Yeah, yes, sir, David.
I like J, because our chief of police wants it. I would like maybe 2 weeks to that.
Let me just say, as a matter of protocol, you guys know this.
Yeah.
So this is a particular area. This is not a legislative item. You're adding something at the dais. So
I would like 2 weeks to digest it.
you would like what now?
I would like 2 weeks to digest that.
You would.
I would.
So you could pass the first reading tonight and add this to the second reading, right? So this, correct? So when the second reading comes up, even though it's not read tonight, it could be read as part of the second reading. That's correct. So that all the council members would have time to enjoy it.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm sorry, Sarah. I was like, Randy. So all the council members, have time to digest it over the next 2 weeks. So what I'm going to suggest is that you deliberate on the ordinance as read tonight, knowing that you're going to add item J to the second reading. Is that acceptable? Okay. All right. Sorry, gentlemen. Thank you for your time, as always. Further deliberation, thoughts, or comments from council on this matter? Yes, ma'am, Sarah.
You know I love a good summary before we vote to explain why I'm voting differently. As feedback in terms of the addition of this policy, I think it probably would have been easier for council had we, going into committee, had access to this policy first. We received it in real time in committee, which didn't give us a whole lot of time to wrap our minds around it prior to then. That said, I hear Council Member Johnson saying that when you visited the falls previously, you heard loudspeakers, Councilmember Hills, seeing people litter or have coolers in the water. Again, these are already items or issues that are addressed in our code. It's illegal to litter, it's illegal to have alcohol, it's illegal to have loudspeakers, that's line item C. In this case, I feel like we're playing policy whack-a-mole because you're begging the question of, we already have a laundry list of items that are forbidden in our code. We should address that by adding more items to the code that are illegal because those were so easy to enforce to begin with. To address the concern of Councilmember Johnson of we don't allow swimmers in other parks, we absolutely do. We have Riverside, we have Don White, we have Garard Landing, and those are far more dangerous conditions to access the Chattahoochee River, which I realize we don't control the river, but we control the access points, which are the parks. My 4-year-old can go running headfirst into the Chattahoochee River, and we can see what Swiftwater Rescue can really do in real time. In this situation, you'd be drowning in about 6 inches of water typically, and there haven't been any drownings or Swiftwater issues really for the most part. It's predominantly people who have fallen slipping on the rocks. So it's not true to say that we don't allow swimmers in other parks. I understand, too, the issue related to enforcement, and I appreciate the addition of language to make it clear for the police to be able to enforce. However, I don't believe adding items for enforcement is addressing the issue of having a strong police presence down at the falls currently. You're just adding more items for them to enforce. It doesn't necessarily detract how many people are there. Instead, it begs the question of how many awkward arguments our police officers can get into with people saying, sorry, you can't swim there even though it's public waters. And I realize that the people on the other side are swimming, but you can't swim from this side. Sorry, that technically is a cooler, even though it looks like a backpack. And these are, for the most part, I realize there's the exception to the rule, but these are largely families who are enjoying these public assets that we have, public assets that are tax dollar maintained. And keep in mind, too, when we have a large police presence down by the creek, those are 4 officers that are not on patrol in other places in the city. They are down a hiking trail in the middle of a waterfall talking to somebody about their cooler as opposed to actually patrolling your neighborhood. watching businesses to make sure that they're safe. I don't know that it's the best and highest use of our police force or what we rely on them to do. But again, I understand what you're trying to address, and that leaves me with, to Councilmember Sell's point, it's not illegal parking currently, which is what I actually want to address. I would rather make it to where you designate where there is street parking and make it illegal to park outside of those designated lines, so that you can limit the crowds based off of how many people can just simply access the park through parking. If they can bike there, if they can walk there, more power to them. But really our issue right now is an overcrowding of people who are just making up parking spots throughout the neighborhoods, which also limits our ability to safely access it with, say for instance, a fire engine trying to get down a historic mill road. So with that, I will be voting no.
Yes, sir, David.
Yeah, I should have clarified, we do not allow swimming in water in our parks with water that we control. We don't control the Chattahoochee. So the other thing I'd like to clarify, and I lost my train of thought. Never mind, I'm good.
Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? It's just worth noting, I think, that all 9 people, sir?
I remember my train.
Go ahead, yes, sir.
And the reason why we're putting these ordinances in place is because, with the other ordinances, like no open fires, no loudspeakers, the behavior is still getting worse. The trash is still getting worse. The capacity is still getting worse. So that we have to do something to change what is happening at this park. This is maybe not the best solution, but it's a solution that could work and hopefully start changing the behavior that happens down there.
I think, it's funny, if this were happening at East Roswell Park, or Roswell Area Park, or Grimes Bridge Park, or name the park in Roswell. If you had this kind of activity for this prolonged period of time, and it's hard to kind of, is my speaker not on? Sorry. Yes, no, sorry. Hello. If you had this kind of activity for this prolonged period of time, I would say in some ways the city's been tone deaf. The city has been tone deaf. The city has not responded to a problem that's been ongoing. And it's funny, Christine brought it up. I had actually forgotten. This predates us by a significant. You guys had a task force 3 or 4 years ago, and quite frankly, we've had such an ambitious agenda that honestly, these are the things you get elected to do as public servants, to your fellow residents, and they're not the fun stuff to do because nobody wants to go in and start saying, hey, we want to do this to a park. Like, this is the city of parks. And this city, people come to the city and live in the city. It's worth noting that often this city extends its services to people who are not residents. We're such a welcoming city that our taxpayers pay often for the use and services of our parks, where often it's not even residents using, it's non-residents, which we welcome because we share the love of our great park system. But I would suggest to you, by the way, the 9 people, the 3 staff members, the 3 council members, and the 3 residents, for the most part, my challenge to them was come up with ideals that are out of the box. We've got the same tried and true answers. By the way, there is a parking solution coming, but it won't come until the parking study's done. So we didn't want to shortcut the answer to parking until we had a complete answer from a macro perspective by having the parking study done, because we thought that would be kind of a whack-a-mole approach. The challenge behind this was that the task force, for the working group, came up with things really based upon recommendations that would help enforcement and help change and modify some of the ongoing challenges that have been continued, because frankly, they have gotten more challenging, not less challenging. In the 2.5 years we've been here, it's gotten worse. And reality is that we've not been, I think, faithful stewards in solving and correcting the problem for not only our residents in the mill, but to all our residents who are the part of the Roswell community. And so if you went down there and experienced it, you would probably be mad at us, and rightly so, because we hadn't dealt with this before, because we haven't done something about this. And this is not meant as a wholesale approach, but that's why literally I asked 9 people that I thought could come into it objectively and start looking for solutions, and this is the beginning of solutions. I too, Mark, have lots of pictures of me and my family there at that park. I love that park. And we got to get back to a place where people can love it again, and anybody in the community can go there at any time. David makes an interesting example that David, as a young dad, went down there and said, I can't have my kids here. That's crazy. And if we had those kind of issues in any park in Roswell, we would have dealt with this a long time ago. And honestly, we've kind of been irresponsible not dealing with this before. We kind of let the ball roll way too long, and it's been unfair to that park. Okay, what's that, sir? What is it? So, thank you very much, Janet, for that helpful commentary. All right, so thank you, Janet. I appreciate those comments. Always helpful. All right, guys. Any additional thoughts? Thanks very much. All right, Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, sir. Motion to approve item number 3. Approval of a text amendment of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to Section 14.2.4, paragraphs, or Section 17, activities prohibited in parks and public places, Old Mill Park. This is the first reading as presented.
Thank you, Christine. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hands by showing of your hands. Let the record show 5. All opposed? Let it show 1. So 5 are in favor, 1 opposed, and the motion of the first reading goes forward with the adjustment of the item J to be added to the second reading. By the way, I didn't get clear on that from the vote, so there's that clarity. Everybody in agreement with that that voted for it, please show your hands if you're in favor of it. Everybody opposed to it? Thanks, 5-1. Thanks very much. Okay, very good. Next, we go to community development with our liaison member and pro tem Councilmember William Morthland. Councilmember Morthland, would you read the first item under the community development?
Yes, sir. First item for community development is CU 2024-0837, CV 2024-0836, 870 Woodstock Road, request for a conditional use for outdoor rental of construction and landscaping equipment, and the concurrent variance of a reduction to the Type D buffer requirements, presented by Angela Rainbow.
Thank you, Will. Welcome, Angela.
Evening, Mayor, council members. Okay. As stated, our first item on the agenda is a conditional use permit for 870 Woodstock Road. Home Depot is requesting a conditional use for outdoor rental of construction and landscaping equipment and a concurrent variance for a reduction to the Type D buffer requirements. That is a aerial view of the site location and surrounding properties. In terms of background, the subject property is 14.63 acres fronting on Woodstock Road and includes a 135,000 square foot retail home improvement and garden center. Property is on Parkway Village. The applicant proposes to add a 4,935 square foot masonry building addition to serve as a tool rental center and a fenced enclosure that will be installed behind and connected to the building, which will be dedicated to rental equipment such as ladders, scaffolding, and other items that need to be stored outside. Additionally, the applicant is requesting a concurrent variance to UDC Section 9.7.20A.F in order to create 8 spaces for large rental equipment such as bobcats and backhoes, and a portion of the area currently serving as a 40-foot buffer. He proposes to reduce the type D buffer at this area of the proposed parking stalls to between 10 and 14 feet. For your reference, that is the zoning map. You see the majority of the properties are zoned Parkway Village with to the south Civic, which includes a private school, senior living, and a church. That is the overall site plan. This is a close-up of the subject property, including the addition, this little fenced area, and the 8 parking spaces that are going to be used for the large equipment rental. For the variance analysis, as stated, in addition to the conditional use, the applicant is requesting a variance in order to locate the compact power equipment parking stalls on the site. Specifically, the variance requests a reduction to the type D buffer requirements as shown in this plan before you. In the area where the parking stalls will be located, the buffer will be reduced to between 10 and 14 feet. In the areas to the left and the right of the parking stalls, the buffer increases to 22 to 32 feet. And toward the rear of the Home Depot building, the 40-foot buffer is maintained. The applicant has worked with the neighbor directly adjacent to the proposed improvements, Mr. Chris Rogers, who is the owner of Building Kids of Roswell School, to propose a landscape plan that will provide screening for the school. The plan before you shows the current landscape plan that was coordinated with Mr. Rogers and includes the planting of 13 evergreen trees along the shared property line. One picture of the site looking from the street. Same site looking from the other end. Staff recommendation. Staff is recommending approval with conditions of the conditional use request for outdoor rental. If the mayor and council chooses to approve the above conditional use request, staff recommends the following conditions. Approval shall be in substantial compliance with the site plan dated July 2nd, 2024. Staff is recommending approval of the concurrent variance to a reduction in the type D buffer requirements. If the mayor and council chooses to approve the above request, staff recommends the following condition. The applicant shall plant 13 6-foot-tall evergreen trees as shown on the landscape plan dated July 2nd, 2024. And this was heard by the Planning Commission at their August meeting. Planning Commission is also recommending approval with conditions of the conditional use request with the following condition: maintain a 6-foot wooden fence in the area adjacent to parking stalls for outdoor rental equipment. That concludes the staff presentation. We'll be happy to take any questions.
Angela, thank you so much. Does council have any thoughts, comments, or questions on the matter? Any questions for staff? Thank you very much. Is the applicant here? Would the applicant like to address the body and make any comments?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jordan Corbett. My address is 1565 Parkside Drive over in Milton. So Ms. Rambeau gave a great presentation. I do have a presentation, and I can go probably pretty quickly through it. It's a lot of repetitive information.
Hey, Jordan, just for edification, I know that you're the applicant, and you obviously stated your name and address. Do me a favor and tell everybody what your role is, so everybody's clear.
Absolutely. So I work for Kimley Horn, but I'm a site development consultant for Home Depot.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Absolutely. All right, so as Ms. Rambo stated, here for a conditional use permit request with a concurrent variance for their Northwest Roswell store at 870 Woodstock Road. Oh, there it goes. Oh, you're good? Okay. All right. Just a quick overview. So I was here before the council here back in October of last year where a text amendment was approved to the Parkway Village zoning district, which allowed for the conditional use of, I guess it's the outdoor rental of construction and landscaping equipment. That was approved in October of last year. Conversations originated with Councilmember Palmero at the time, where Home Depot wanted to bring a tool rental center to the store. And so the tool rental use within the confines of the building was already allowed in the Parkway Village zoning district, but the outdoor rental of the equipment that you would see at a typical Home Depot was not allowed. And so we spoke with Councilmember Palmero at the time to see if we could bring a text amendment to add it, and it was added as a conditional use. In addition to, we'll see here in a slide what the requirements of adding it as a conditional use to the code wound up be, and for this site to work within the confines of the code, the type D buffer would have to be reduced, and so that we have a concurrent variance as part of this. We did have a neighborhood meeting on July 2nd here at City Hall. One member did show up in attendance. She is the homeowner. If you look at the garden center, the house directly across from it, and that where it says single family, she attended and wanted to understand what the project was. When we told her it was on the opposite side of the building, she did not have any concerns. Okay, next. Just the existing site. So the main area of concern is the right-hand side of the image above, where the fire lane will be extended out to the east as the building addition is added, and then that reduces the type D buffer. All right, next. Some existing site photos that we took as well. So this is the area where the drive aisle will be shifted out. The light poles will also be shifted as well. Around where the light pole is kind of where that parking spaces are intended to go. And then you can see that there's an existing fence that Mr. Rogers had put up between his school and Home Depot when the Building Kids was constructed. There's an image of the fence. All right, next. So for the conditional use permit, again, so here are the the conditions that were added as part of the conditions for allowing this type use within Parkway Village. Home Depot satisfies all of these requirements except for the maintaining the type C or D buffer. Next. And then again, here's the concurrent variance, as Ms. Rambo mentioned. You can go to the next slide, gives a little bit more detail. Here's a blow up of what our initial landscape plan was. When it was basically just met city requirements as it comes to landscaping. And after meeting with Mr. Rogers, understanding the needs of the school, of the existing pine trees that are there to provide shade for the playground area, we decided to work with him and remove the proposed trees, add more of an evergreen. 13 cryptomeria is what is currently proposed, which can grow very tall. They obviously won't be the same height as the pine trees on day one, but after a few years, they'll grow taller and provide the shade once again. But the pine trees as well, providing a little bit less debris that fall on the playground as it is today. So trying to work with them in that regard. And here's a proposed site plan. So initially we had proposed 10. So this is part of a national program that Home Depot is bringing across the country with the tool rental center, building additions to existing stores that don't have them. Their prototype program is 10 equipment spaces essentially for display or storage as contractors can come and utilize them. In this case, every 8 spaces, the city requires a landscape island. So to have 10 spaces, we would have to have a landscape island in between some of the spaces or ask for an additional variance. And working with Home Depot, we just reduced it down to 8 to not have to add a landscape island in between those parking spaces to, you know, it'd be a little bit more of a operational issue if we had to break up those spaces, so. Thanks. And that's it. So I'm here to answer any
Jordan,
questions.
the fact, I think you're one of my favorite people in the world now, even though you're from Milton, because you got the name of Councilmember Palermo. I just want to keep hearing that. I want to keep hearing Councilmember Palermo. It's awesome. It's Palermo, but you keep saying Palermo because we're loving it. I promise you. At your point, Mike was instrumental in working with you guys on this, and you guys have done a lot of work, I know, in terms of kind of getting to a threshold that was acceptable, I think, for the recommendation of staff. Council, any thoughts, comments, or questions for the applicant? Councilmember Worthland.
I'd like to start by saying congratulations, because I got very, very good feedback from the Planning Commission in working with you. They said that your presentation and the willingness that you exhibited through the whole process was fantastic. And that is high praise as compared to some of the things that come through Planning Commission. So that is very valuable to us. One quick question for Ms. Payton and Ms. Rambo here. I see on the staff recommendation, we are talking about the planting of 13 6-foot-tall evergreen trees, and then underneath, we have a Planning Commission recommendation, maintain a 6-foot wooden fence. Are both of those running together, or we're okay with both of those? Has that been discussed?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I can, if you would,
Yes,
I
sir,
can
Jordan.
elaborate a little bit. So during the Planning Commission meeting, that was part of the concern is should the fence separating the property that currently provides that buffer from the proposed rental equipment and the school playground were to fall down during construction or fall down in the future, just making sure that there remained a buffer there. He very much, that Planning Commission member, very much wanted a type C buffer versus type D. We just said, you know, there is already a fence barrier there in addition to the landscaping that we'll be putting in. And so we're happy to, you know, working with Home Depot, happy to maintain that fence should anything happen to it in the future. So.
Thanks, Jordan. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. I love your graphics in your presentation. I did not see a wood splitter. Will you have a wood splitter over there?
There's only so much room, so.
But you could swap
yeah.
them out maybe with your
Well, yeah.
cousin depots? Because I will tell you, I've had to bootleg equipment across the Cobb County line, and it pains me not to spend the money in Roswell.
Sure.
So I would love that. I'd also like to go on record and say, I can't believe it. Please mark this down. East Roswell residents have access to rentals at a Home Depot, and West Roswell do not. That may be a first time of you got something I don't have. So I'm very excited about this. I live very close to that store and love what you all did about 10 years ago, putting Purple Heart reserves parking out front for our veterans. So big fan, love this, excited to see it come to fruition, and thank you for being such a good neighbor working with your fellow property line folks.
I will say too, Mr. Chris Rogers, he's here tonight, but with Building Kids has been great to work with throughout the process. So very accommodating, very easy meeting to come to a resolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Jordan, very much. Yes, sir. Alan, Councilmember Sells.
I would just point out to Councilmember Hill that it's because we don't have indoor plumbing or heating and air conditioning. We needed a wood splitter on the east side of Roswell. That's why we don't have it.
That's because of Councilmember Palermo.
Yeah.
Bob Jordan, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
It's just too good. I don't mean to embarrass you. It's just so good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, now, do you guys already rent trucks there as well?
There is some, I believe there is some Home Depot branded box trucks that are there.
Okay, and so was that not part of this? Because there's only 8 spaces. Is that in the front? Is that always in the front? I know you do it.
I want to say that this discussion, I believe, has come up, and I believe as part of the existing use, it may be already an accessory use to the code, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, because you actually use spaces in the front for the rental in East
believe.
Roswell. It's a little bit of a hot mess, so if you wanted to put that in the back over there, it'd be all right too.
All right, thank you, Alan. Appreciate it. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, very good. All right, at this time, any Roswell residents that would like to address this matter? Being that there are none, thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you, Angela. All right, back to council. Final thoughts, comments, or questions? Councilmember Worthland?
Gosh. Quick clarifying question for staff. The way that this is written right now does take into play both the Planning Commission recommendations as well as staff recommendations. We don't need to make two statements there, correct?
Add both the conditions to your motion.
Motion would include both. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks. So the motion will include both of the recommendations from the Planning Commission. That's what your intention. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being there not, Councilman Worthland, do you have a motion, sir?
Motion to approve CU 2024-0837 CV 2024-0836 870 Woodstock Road, request for a conditional use for outdoor rental of construction and landscape equipment, and a concurrent variance for a reduction of the Type D buffer requirements, along with the Planning Commission recommendations coupled with the staff recommendations.
Is that good enough, David? Very good. Thank you. Good. You guys got that? You guys clear with that, Angela? Perfect. Thank you so much. So a motion's been made by Councilmember Mortland. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. A motion is made with two additions from the Planning Commission. All in favor of the motion, please show so by raising your hands. Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Councilmember Mortland, would you read the second item under the community development, please, sir?
Second item on the community development is 2024-2144. This is 330 Brown Drive, Metropolitan River Protection Act. This item was deferred from the August 12th, 2024 Mayor and Council meeting, being presented by Kristen Thomasberger.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm presenting 330 Brown Drive for a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate. We heard this last month and it was deferred. Just to recap, the river corridor, all properties within that blue section need to go through the Metropolitan River Protection Act, which means that they have to, before they can build anything or extend their house, if they haven't gone through there, they have to get approval by the Atlanta Regional Commission for the amount of impervious and the amount of clearing that's allowed on their property. Okay. This is an aerial of the property that was obtained from the Fulton County Tax Assessor website. It's better than the one that we had at last meeting, so you can see Brown Drive and where the property, it's the one outlined in red. This is the zoning map. It is zoned RS12, and all the other green properties on the map are zoned RS12 as well. So that is single-family residential outside of the historic district. This is the approved site plan that our engineering manager looked at, and the erosion control plan as well. He needed to review this and approve it before it was sent down to the Atlanta Regional Commission. It was sent down to ARC, and they approved the numbers, and on the next slide you can see those. Category C and Category D, those two letters that are up there, that just says what the vulnerability categories are, and there's different percentages that allow a certain amount of impervious in them. The ARC had their final finding and found that it was consistent with their records, and so they approved it, and so now it has to come before you all to approve as well. Some of the things that we found after we had the last meeting, we found a recorded plat from 2003 that showed Brown Drive. It actually said road, but it's the same access basically to that property. If you zoom in, it says currently providing access to the Wright, Moss, and Brock parcels. On this plat, it is the Wright parcel. I have those highlighted. Furthermore, another plat was found in 2006, and it had the same note as well. So there is access, according to these recorded plats, from that gravel drive. On the Fulton County Tax Assessor property information, it does have a semi-improved street listed as their street type, and it has all public utilities. So one of the questions that we had was, what process will this have to go through? So a process for a new single-family home in the river corridor is a little similar to what it has to go through outside the river corridor, except they have to get their MRPA numbers approved first by ARC and by mayor and council. After that it's over, the applicant has to have a stormwater concept meeting with EPW. And I think in your in the application packet that was put online, but I don't have it in here, it has the multiple checklists before they go for stormwater and LDP. So there's about a dozen pages in there that has all the checklists that they have to have before that. Applicant submits a land disturbance permit application, which will be reviewed by engineering, stormwater, transportation, planning and zoning, Roswell the tree, the arborist, Roswell Water if they are on Roswell Water, if they're on Fulton County, Roswell Water does not have to review, and any other applicable department. Once the LDP is approved, then they can submit for a building permit, and they are reviewed for the following departments: engineering, building, planning and zoning, and any other applicable departments. Any conditions or comments from the plan reviewers must be addressed before permits and certificates of occupancy are issued. And that is it, if you have any questions.
Kristen, thank you so much. Does council have any questions or comments on the matter? Sarah? Christine?
Thank you. Thank you for deferring. Is Brown Drive or road, is it, I just want clarity, is it a public road maintained by the city of Roswell, or is it a private drive?
We got confirmation that it was private. On the map, it was showing that it was public, and then we had to check with Mike Elliott, and he said that it is private.
So it's a private road that's maintained by those Wright, Moss, and Becker property owners.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Sarah?
So as it relates to, just wanting to confirm with staff, as it relates to today's approval, we're specifically looking at the MRPA, the Metropolitan River Protection Act, and the confines of that for today's approval for mayor and council. After we review the MRPA, that's to say that it will still go through every single department at the city for engineering, stormwater, transportation, planning and zoning, tree, water if applicable, any other department. That is when those would come into play, including things like buffers, the size of the property, utilization of the property. That is for much, well, not much, it's the next step. Today is just for the MRPA approval, correct?
That's correct. If you approved the numbers today, even if this current project were to not go through, those numbers would stay with the property. So if, say, the neighbor wanted to buy that property and expand on there, they would have those numbers. They wouldn't have to go through it again because those numbers would have already been approved
As a
by
pre-existing
ARC.
MRPA, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the specs that they've provided otherwise have been approved, even if the property sells or transfers to owners.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Willie, yes, sir? Okay, very good. Does the applicant have any comments? Welcome.
Steve Rowe with AEC, 50 Warm Spring Circle.
Hey,
I'm
Steve.
just here to answer any questions you might have regarding the approval.
Okay, Steve, thank you. Anybody have any questions for the applicant at this time? Very good. Steve, thank you. All right, I'm going to ask, are there any Roswell residents that would like to speak on this matter? Yes, ma'am, in the hat? Yes, ma'am, you in the hat there?
Janet Russell, Roswell resident. Just a few
Sorry,
clarifications.
what's your address, ma'am? I'm sorry.
260 Willow Springs Drive. I
Thank
don't
you.
like to say it in public since this is live streamed.
I'm sorry, ma'am, that's a requirement of
Okay.
part of the meeting.
First of all, Brown Drive has never been a public road. It's been a blue sign forever. Just so get a little perspective of, MRPA has approved this. MRPA didn't come and look at it. They just looked at a map, which is as flat as this tabletop. They have no idea the impact of what they're approving. Just so you know, Brown Drive is half, maybe 3/4 the width of that pew. So figure that. 3/4 of the width of that seat is the width of Brown Drive, which is not paved currently. When they said improved, we all laughed. We think, what was it, used gravel? We don't care. One house is down there, and I just have a technical term because I don't know the rules. The sign that they've had up, you know, that advises us of these for the applications for the burp and all that, is way down at the end of Brown Drive, where the property begins. It is not visible to the public because it's on a private street that is probably the length of this room. If it hasn't been out for public view, because why would anybody go down a private street, have they met all of the requirements for advertising this? I don't know, but I found it curious. There is no way you can see that sign. You know how we have them all over here and you have to go past them because they're on public roads. This one is at the end of a private street or a private, it was really a driveway to the houses. It was never considered a street. I know you're going to go through all the other stuff, but I want to plant this in your mind just a little bit. The width of the road does not allow for any fire trucks to ever go down there because it's not wide enough. And if there was a fire and they went down, they wouldn't be able to get out because they'd have to back out. Let that sink in. The ladies that live in their house, their parents bought it in 1964 or 65. Two sisters live in it now. They are retired. The construction will be probably from this podium to that wall from their house all day long while they're retired. They're also wanting to put in a pool, which will mean lots of construction. I wonder about the impact of a pool in this area because we're at the top of the hill, and that would be more impervious surface. And we know there are strict regulations. Now, I know we are not in the historic district, but this property abuts the historic district. It is contiguous with the historic district. So I want you to plant all of that in your brain because it's very important that just because the BRMPA thing meets all the requirements doesn't mean it meets the requirements of the neighborhood. I would hope that you would plant this in your brain to say no to this project, because when you do that, you're saying yes to the people that live in the neighborhood, because they're entitled to live a quality of life that isn't beholding to somebody that wants to build a large house with a pool that they're going to have to drive by. Literally, you're the porch. The road is in front of here to their house. Construction trucks, everything for probably 10 months. So when you make a decision, it's not just about a map. It's about real lives and real people.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Ernie.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Ernie.
I do want to commend you for last meeting putting in deferment so we could rediscuss this. And I know I asked the question last time, has anybody gone out there and looked at this? Anybody here? You? Okay. Well, here's some pictures. We're going to look at it. Can you put this on? Show me how, and that way I can discuss it. So this is Jones Drive. I took the picture. I'm on Jones Drive looking down that driveway towards their house. Now you're telling me that's a maintained road? That's not even a road. It's a driveway. How? Well, anyway, so it's a driveway. It's on a curve. There's no way you can hardly back a truck into that place without causing an accident, because when you come in Jones Drive, you come in to the right, you take another immediate right on a curve, and that's where the curve you're on. And it's very difficult because when they come around, there's people walking their dogs and all that, and it's a concern just on the safety issue. That's walking a little further from the street. And if you notice, if you can visualize it, on the right side of that going down the road, the elevation actually drops towards the house. On the left side, there's basically a gutter system for the water that runs off the street there. And then they maintain the grass in the center of that driveway. There's no maintenance of that as far as a road. Going further down, you notice the house on their right. You can see where it falls off to the right. So if you have a truck or anything larger than a pickup maybe, trying to maneuver down there in a safe way, there's no turnaround at the end of that. How do these trucks get in there and get out without backing up? Then they back onto the curb of the street, not visually seeing anything when they do it. As Janet pointed out, that's where the sign's at. And I believe, I don't know exactly, but I believe the width of that is probably around 25 foot. That's access to that property. And then lastly, that's a picture of the lot to the right of it. In the back of that, it's all floodplain. It's a real low area, and it floods from Roswell Road, coming all the way down the subdivision that's on the other side of this property, and then, of course, where Thousand Hills at. A lot of water maintains right in front of their house. And she's had problems over the past of accumulation of water. So it's kind of difficult. But I know what you guys are up against. You know, people come up and complain and they don't want things to happen. But I think if you review the history of that, or what little I could get out of it, there hasn't been a house there in over 25 years on that lot. It's just been an empty lot. I've lived around there for 12 years, and that lot's never been maintained by anybody. It's kudzu everywhere. It's fenced on both sides. And to my knowledge, in 12 years, I've never seen anybody maintain it or do anything else. The term came up landlocked. And I wonder because that house, I think, was there before their house, the people that, Jackie's and Brenda's. And they were there. There's a subdivision to the back side of that. And I would think back then that's how they accessed that property to get to it. Of course, when they built the subdivision, they eliminated access from that side, which brings you to the point, was there ever an easement issued on this property to go through their private drive to get to this lot? Okay? We don't know that. If there's no easement, they have no right. They are landlocked, but that's not their problem. So we need to find that out. And I'm surprised that hadn't been even addressed yet. You're making decisions, you're approving things, but you don't have all the answers.
Thank you, Ernie. I appreciate it. By the way, I failed to ask for your address, so share with everybody where you're a Roswell resident and where you live.
437 Jones Drive.
Thank you, sir, very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Ernie. I think, City Attorney, could you make a comment on what the issue that we're actually adjudicating tonight? Because I hear things that sound like they're going to come before, at some point, before community development, if an application is ever put in on this piece of property. And it sounds like we're adjudicating items that are not part of this process. So can you give some clarification on this?
Yeah, so within the Metropolitan River Protection area, there are certain categories where you're allowed to have impervious surface, and you're only allowed to have so much impervious surface within that area. And all this is a determination on what impervious surface can be on this lot, and that's all this is.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes, ma'am, Sarah.
May I, because I know you didn't have it in your slide deck, may I give what was included in our packet over to a staff member? You don't have to walk us through it, but just quickly flip through the categories on the projector so folks can get an idea of, I hear it's very concerning for a resident to think that we're literally just talking impervious surface tonight. All of your concerns are coming to the city after this step, and we'll go through this exhaustive checklist. Again, we're not going to go item by item, but just to give you a general idea, if you want to flip through this real quickly.
I think, Sarah, would you kind of just,
Yeah, just the point that I was going to make is if you flip a little bit faster, so you'll see fire is covered, which to address the conditions of the roads themselves. Is there an easement in place for the roads? There's 3 pages of just checklists for items for DOT to see if even the road itself has an easement. Is it accessible? Is there a driveway? Is there a curb cut? Is there a fire hydrant? All of these things are not here yet. We're not, I hear you. I hear you guys saying that it's no. But the applicant hasn't had to answer those questions yet. What we're answering tonight is purely what the city attorney is stating, is this enough or too much impervious surface for the city within this 2,000-foot buffer according to this zone? Your concerns will be addressed in this very exhaustive checklist that city staff will be going through next if the applicant is approved this evening. So I hear your concerns. We're just not to that step yet. Thank you, ma'am.
so I think with that in mind, I think really the comment should be regarding the MERPA application and not the other issues, because the other issues aren't really before the body. Like the body's not addressing any of their issues. So if there's comments in reference to the MERPA application, I would be delighted to hear those. So any Roswell residents would like to talk about the MERPA application and its applicability to this specific matter. Yes, sir. In the blue shirt. Yes, sir.
I haven't filled out a card yet, but my name is Roberto Paredes.
Yes, sir.
I'm an architect. I own the property immediately to the south of the subject property.
Roberto, what's your address, sir?
30 Connemara.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, thanks.
And the main concern I have related to the Chattahoochee corridor is I would like to know if the boundary lines, as indicated as Zone D and E, have actually been surveyed. As I mentioned previously, I guess it was last month or so, when we built our home on the adjacent property and we were in a much more restrictive zone, we had to jump through hoops, not only within the city of Roswell, but also with the ARC in order to actually determine the accuracy of that line. And right now it's just a line on a map, right? So whoever traced that line could be fudging it, or it could be precisely plotted from GPS database, which I don't know if that's what they've done. But I would want to make sure that those environmental zones are clearly defined and they're clearly adhered to the regulations in terms of impervious and disturbance and so on and so forth. That's all I have.
Thank you, Roberto. Steve, do you want to address any of that?
Yeah, we took the mapping from the ARC and overlaid it onto the plan and traced the lines that were on the MERPA, sent it down to Jim Santo. He confirmed that we were correct in our locations of those lines. Now, when we go under construction and we start laying things out, we will actually survey those lines on the ground, but we have not done that yet and would not do that until we actually got further into the process.
Because this is just the MERPA
Correct.
piece of it.
Correct.
Which you have to get approval before you can even put an application in.
I came and started designing a house until I got these numbers in hand.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Sir, I saw you in the back. You said that one that, in the, yes, sir, light green shirt? Yes, sir. Welcome, sir.
I'm William Cassidy, the owner of the lot. Couple of things. I've owned it for a long time. There was a house on there, old house, when I purchased it. And when they built the subdivision to the west, which is actually at a lower elevation than any of this lot, or, well, not the whole subdivision, but 2 or 3 houses are actually lower going down in elevation. Where he talked about the water, there's houses there built in like 2012, 2014, something like that, and they got a whole subdivision down in there. So I'm not sure about, I've never been over there when there's been much water. And it's it goes down, it's 2/3 of an acre. So there's, the part that does go down, you could have, you know, a lot of water in there. It's never gonna be touching the house. So there's plenty of room to build a big house without the water. I don't believe, I'm a real estate appraiser, probably have appraised over 11,000 houses. I've been a foreclosure manager for old Decatur Federal Savings, if anybody remembers that, for a couple of years. I have appraised plenty of houses. The house that was on there when I moved there was, I believe, the original house. And then the other houses built used that road that the original house, they went out on it, you know, they were the first ones there, the house where the lot is that I have. So the other houses that then adjoined to the east, they then were able to use that same driveway. Now, as far as a fire truck.
Okay, so sorry, Mr. Cassidy, I'm gonna interrupt you only because this only is relevant to the MERP application. I really shouldn't have let the two speakers go on as long as they did. The only thing that's in front of this body is just the MERP application. So the fire truck issue, not even relevant tonight, and I apologize. So you don't even have to address it. If a permit actually comes in the city, those issues will become relevant to the city, and the city will begin to adjudicate them and address them. As Steve just said, he doesn't even have the ability to do a design on a house yet because he's got to get a MERP application, which has to do with.
But there was a fire truck on there. I got a call one day saying somebody that I had trimming or cutting the whole yard, I told him, I says, hey, where this old house was, there's some lines sticking up. I showed him right where they were. What did he do? He drove over it anyway, and I got a call that the fire department was there. And when I pulled up, you heard all this hissing because what it did, he'd chopped into the old gas line. So the fire department buried it deeper so it couldn't happen again. But the fire department got there. They were able to get there very easily on the path.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. I appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you, sir, very much. Yes, ma'am. And then I just want to kind of qualify my statements. It's reference to the MERPA application. So,
Yes, I am the one that lives in the house on Brown Drive,
yes, ma'am. What is your address?
334,
And tell me your name.
Brenda Strickland.
Welcome, Brenda.
There is a flooding problem, and the city does not do anything about it. I get with a mattock myself and open that ditch to where the water will not run on us. And I guess I have had trouble with flooding. I've got pipes under the ground and under my porch to keep the water out of my house. I live in the basement, and my sister lives upstairs. Yes, it does flood down there. And they come out, when they built that subdivision down that joins it, they'll come out there and they put up a cement wall because that water was washing in them new homes. Yes, there is a terrible problem. They have got a retaining hole dug at the end of the fence down there to catch that water. I am concerned that when they bring them big trucks in there, they're gonna tear my yard up. And yes, there was a fire truck that come in, but he had to back out and he tore our yard up. We've been there we moved there in 1964, my mother and daddy bought that. It wasn't a flood zone then because it was woods for they built them homes. And there was a little creek down there that the water run in. Well, they done away with all that. And they put the water on us. Yeah, I think somebody needs to come out there and not look at a map. And thank you.
Brenda, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you being here tonight. Would any other Roswell residents like to address the MERPA item? Being that they're not, Steve, do you have any final comments from your end of it, sir? All right, I'm going to bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions. All right, Councilmember Morthland, Pro Tem Morthland, this area is falls underneath your purview, sir. Would you like to make a motion?
With the understanding, all we are doing is, again, discussing the MERPA map. Motion to approve 2024-2144 330 Brown Drive, Metropolitan River Protection Act.
So a motion has been made by Councilmember Morthland. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Johnson. All understand the matter before you? Thank you. All in favor of passing the motion made by Councilmember Morthland, seconded by Councilmember Johnson, please show so by raising your hands. Let the record show that the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Councilmember Morthland, there is, I think, your last item on the community development. Would you please read it, sir?
Yes, sir. Last item on community development, 2024-2512. This is 11510 Woodstock Road, conditional use to UDC, section 9.5, commercial uses for indoor recreation with special events facility and outdoor recreation, presented by Jeannie Payton.
Thanks, Councilmember.
Evening, Mayor and
Jeannie.
Council.
How are you?
The property at 11510 Woodstock Road is requesting a conditional use for indoor recreation with a special events facility and outdoor recreation at the site. This shows the site on the corner of Woodstock and Crossville where it turns into Woodstock Road. It fronts Woodstock Road. The subject property is 2.88 acres fronting Woodstock Road. It includes an original daycare building to the northern end of the portion of the site and a newly developed daycare center to the southern portion of the site with an attached outdoor play area. The center operates as a daycare Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. and the property is zoned Parkway Village. The applicant proposes to use the gymnasium and the outdoor playground space to host special events where parents can socialize and while their children play. I also show a timeline background of the hearing processes that the applicant has gone through for the daycare use in the Parkway Village for small tract request and all the design review board hearings here. This shows all the adjacent zoning, which is Parkway Village to the north, east, and west, and residential mixed-use senior living facility to the south. And this shows the recorded combination plat on file that the applicant submitted when they began their construction of the new daycare facility to the south. And the site plan. This shows the outdoor play area, and the gymnasium area in question is all the way to the right on this. It shows a large portion of it, but not the entire. And here's some renderings of the outdoor play area with outdoor pavilions and play space that are all fenced in and enclosed between the two facilities. Staff recommends approval with conditions of the conditional use for indoor recreation with special events facility and outdoor recreation. We recommended a condition to Planning Commission for the special events hosted on the site to end by 9 p.m. Planning Commission heard this case on August 20th at their August hearing and recommended the following 5 conditions. Facility parking to be used for the conditional use is limited to parking as defined in the UDC. Operations for activities related to the conditional use are limited to Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., with operations ending by 9 p.m. The conditional use for indoor recreation with special events facility and outdoor recreation cannot overlap the primary use as a daycare, and that events with an occupancy exceeding 200 are required to have a shared parking agreement in accordance with the UDC on file with community development. And finally, they suggested no alcohol at the outdoor recreation or special events on days when the daycare is operational. Have any questions?
Thanks, Jeannie. Thanks so much. Does council have any thoughts, comments, or questions on this matter? Councilmember Sells.
Hey, Jeannie, so you didn't accept the recommendations of the Planning Commission. Specifically, talk to me about number 1, the facility parking used for conditional use is limited to parking as defined by the UDC. Tell me why you didn't accept that one, and can you maybe explain what that requirement is as it's written, and then why you didn't take it?
Well, the conditions that we suggested came into the Planning Commission meeting, and then these conditions that Planning Commission suggested were a result of discussion between staff and the Planning Commission the night of the hearing. So it's not that we didn't accept it, it's that we went into the process.
So is staff's recommendation that we accept all the Planning Commissions?
Yes.
Okay,
And I can talk you through any thought processes.
All right, so there's there's 6 recommendations from staff, including the Planning Commission recommendations, is what you're saying?
I believe that our original recommendation is covered in item 2 here.
Thank you.
Where it
Got it.
suggests that operations end by 9.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to discuss more of number 1?
No,
what the rationale was?
Yeah, so if you wanted to describe exactly what they can and cannot do under the UDC for the parking spaces that they have, what do they say?
The discussion with Planning Commission for that item surrounded using the parking for some sort of special event, like a bouncy house or a food truck cluster that would take up the parking that was needed for the special events. The applicant had no problem with this condition because he stated that the idea of the special events use was to be enclosed behind the fenced area where children, anybody participating are safe, and the parking is the parking.
And how many spaces does he have?
He had 48 on the plan that I counted, but he does supposedly have 65. We asked for a subsequent plan, didn't get one, but I would concur that he has 65. And that's where the 200 number was calculated from to ensure that per the code, in its most extreme definition of what parking could be on the site, 200 occupants at the special events activities would be the maximum for the parking he has on site.
Okay. And with regard to number 2, those times were suggested by the applicant, I believe? Is that correct?
Actually 6 to 8:30.
Right, and the Planning Commission extended it so there'd be cleanup time and they could be through for the
Yeah.
residents that abut it.
There was
by 9
discussion
o'clock.
about setup. If a setup is more complicated, tear down's more complicated, that they would need to begin that before 8:30, and that if it's a simple setup and tear down, that could happen faster, but that all the activity ceases on the site by 9.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. David.
On the Planning Commission's recommendation for number 5, if the applicant wanted to do an event and serve alcohol Monday through Friday, would he not be able to because of number 5?
This condition is an effort to effectively not allow that and only allow alcohol to be served at special events on Saturday and Sunday.
Sarah?
To confirm on line item number 5, no alcohol, outdoor recreation, or special events on days where daycare is operational. The applicant is still required to conform to any alcohol serving requirements or licensure within the city separately, correct? I think, is it a catering permit that would be required? Pouring permit. I think it's catering permit though, isn't it? This might not be a you. This might be a City Attorney David Davidson question.
So there is a alcohol license for special events facilities that he would be eligible for.
Correct. So he would still have to maintain and hold that licensure in addition to line item number 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Christine?
I know we had discussed number 5, and looking at eliminating that condition because it's effectively addressed in item number 2. And what that does, there are occasions when the applicant may operate a daycare if there's emergency situations or some strange weather that comes up, if they choose to operate their daycare on a Saturday or Sunday, conversely, they wouldn't be allowed to have alcohol on those days. So since alcohol is not allowed when the daycare is operational during operational times, I think that number 5, I don't believe that number 5 is really necessary since we have number 2. And I think we discussed that a great deal at our legal meetings.
Sarah?
So clarity for others, she's in another legal meeting from the rest of us. We do 3. So completely different conversations. It's my understanding, and I realize the applicant is here this evening, I believe is the latest pickup that you guys can have, is it 6 or 7? 6 o'clock. Okay, so you're right, there is no overlapping, because that was a question we had in our meeting, which was how late could children be picked up and if there was any overlap. So I agree with Councilmember Hall on that.
Thanks, Sarah. Lee?
Thank you. I as well agree with eliminating number 5. The way this reads would negate the opportunity for this business owner to have any sort of special event with or without alcohol on a day or days that the daycare is operational. So I have a special event background, and I think that this would be a handcuff for the applicant on this one. So I agree with pulling that one if this body sees fit. Removing that, excuse me.
Thanks, Lee. David?
I had a question for the applicant whenever.
Yeah, he'll be up here in a minute.
Okay.
He didn't. Yes, sir, Alan.
So I realize this is not a school. Quite frankly, it's a daycare. So how far away would the alcohol be served like this if this was a school? How far away would they have to be?
I don't administrate that section of the code, so I can't
300
answer
feet.
that.
300 feet. So we're putting this in a daycare, right? That this is in a daycare.
The idea is to have the special events facility in the gymnasium portion of the daycare and the outdoor playground facility.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you, counsel. The applicant's here. Would the applicant like to make any comments?
Good evening. My name is Chris Rogers. I am the owner of the building, which is a separate building with the Rogers School building, as well as Building Kids of Roswell and Recess in Roswell, which is what this company is going to be called. It's a special events company, and the thought behind this is that we built this beautiful building, piece of real estate, where we've got hundreds of families who come there, and throughout the last couple of years, I've been running this business for 5 years. We're always getting requests to do birthday parties on the playgrounds, or can I have a baby shower there? I've had wedding requests, things like that. So for me, in how much this building costs to build, and that we're building this beautiful playground out back that's got a green space, and I thought, let's try to create another company, an special events company, where we can host these things and have families there and having lots of family entertainment and safe spaces for kids. The real inspiration behind it is that I've got 2 kids myself under 5, and we're constantly looking for a place to take them, where to go, where they're not jumping off something onto asphalt while I'm trying to have a pizza and be hanging around. So we thought, hey, we've got a very safe space for kids and families to come, and we've got a huge community of people. So the idea behind it is to get the special use permit or conditional use permit for when we're not a daycare. Let's be able to use this and create another business and create more opportunities for families to have gathering spaces and communal events and things like that. So that's kind of the inspiration behind it, but open up to any questions.
Chris, let me ask you a question. So you see the Planning Commission recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Have you seen those before?
Yes.
You're familiar with them?
I am.
Are there any that you disagree with?
I mean, number 5, I agree with because of Councilor Hill's there. It does handcuff me to, and if someone wants to have a baby shower on a Friday night, then I can't do that event. It's just kind of a silly thing. So there's not going to be a situation where we're going to be operating these 2 things at once. And if you've ever been into the building, I would invite all of you to come. But we've constructed in a way where there's security separation between the daycare itself and the space where the special event places would be taking place. So there's not like, if you're concerned about anything on site, it's a completely separate entrance that is locked away from the daycare itself. So, but as far as the other ones go, I mean, parking, like, if we have a parking problem, we're gonna have to handle it or limit the space, much like you talked about at the park earlier today. Operation hours, I don't really have any issues with, but number 5,
So you're good with 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Correct.
Okay. Council? Yeah, David. Sorry, David, now you get your chance.
Hey, yeah. One thing I was just thinking about off the top of my head, would you consider opening this up for during holidays? Because I don't want to limit your ability to host a special event on 4th of July, right? Which is on a Wednesday, but you can't do it till 6 p.m. on Wednesday because it's holiday. So,
No, I'm glad you said that, because we also close during a time of Christmas break as well, and we are closed on those Labor Days and 4th of July days, so if someone wanted to.
I mean,
Yeah.
would this body be willing to look into, and maybe we'll have to come back to this, if.
You want to make an amendment for holidays, right?
Yeah, but, I mean, are you closed for like 2 weeks over Christmas break? Do you follow like the Fulton County schools?
Yeah, we're closed over Christmas break for a period, but really we're open most of the time, except for the major 7 holidays,
Okay.
So I think if number 5 was out the door, that would be a non-issue.
Makes sense. Yes, sir, Alan?
So there's nothing in these limitations that say you can't be open as a daycare and serving alcohol?
Well,
So-
it does, number 2 does.
Well, no, we just talked about the fact that, for instance, if he had an event on Saturday or he had some reason to be open on Saturday, so there's nothing that precludes him from doing both. Number 2 does not say that.
Number 3 does.
Okay,
It can't overlap the primary use of
Okay,
daycare.
perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Wilson?
Okay, wait a minute, stop. Wait a minute, stop the presses. You mean Ellen Sells?
Yes,
actually
indeed.
got caught on something?
Yeah, it
That's
happens.
unbelievable right there. This is,
Yeah.
we need to stop.
That's
unbelievable.
it's pretty funny.
I can't believe you.
I was in a discussion today, and I said, I do have a right to be wrong.
Here's the thing, this guy replaced Councilman
Palmetto.
Palmetto.
That's very good. Sarah, yes, ma'am.
I just have some recommended language for line item 2 per Councilmember Johnson's recommendations, and still to address Councilmember Sell's concerns, even though they are addressed in number 3. Can the language be modified to operations for activities related to the conditional use are limited to, or restricted, I guess, during the operation of the daycare, and not to be before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m.? Because in that case, I get that you're still trying to limit when it's happening too late. You don't want a rager going into 1 a.m. But really, the issue is,
Yeah.
in your situation, we don't want them to conflict at the same time.
I'll give a great example. My son's birthday typically.
Did you want me to recognize you?
Oh,
or
sorry.
You want me to throw you
Yeah,
out?
sorry.
I'm ready to throw you out. Go ahead, sir.
Please,
Sorry, David.
please throw me out.
Yeah, exactly.
I get to go to bed,
Rabbit.
suckers. No, like, my son's birthday falls on winter break. So if it's a time when y'all would be closed, like, January 3rd, that's my son's birthday. You might not be open that day, but I want to host a birthday party for my son that day. I think he should be able to do that in
So we're doing my least favorite thing.
I know.
We're adjudicating on the dice. So, but I think you're trying to find a simple solution.
We're attempting to find a simple solution, and this is not an item that typically goes to committee where we make the
Can
sausage.
I make a quick remark? I do,
No, you can't.
now that you
You're-
mentioned that, Sarah, on line item number 2, like, limiting something to starting at 6, but like, for example, and maybe this helps change the language, when the kids are gone from the school, the daycare is closed, right? Sometimes they're gone at 5:15, 5:30. Like, I guess, I don't love that language that they put in there about the time, because it gives me no flexibility in when I can operate something, if that makes sense.
It does. So what's your recommendation?
I mean, it almost is covered in number 3. Do you think if eliminating 2, doesn't 3 kind of cover it? And, well, I mean, obviously you need the 9 p.m. piece in there, I understand that.
Alan?
Not so fast, cowboy.
I hear you.
Well, the 9 o'clock stop was for the neighbors.
Yes, no, so I
Okay?
agree with that
Let's be
completely,
clear
but
about
it's
that.
more
And-
like,
and you suggested the time in the first place.
I did suggest the time in the first place, understandable, but then I started to sit there and realize I'm in the building and it's 5:30 and everybody's gone, we're technically closed. So, I mean, I wrote that letter a month and a half ago, and then I left the planning council very tired and trying to wrap my head around
Recall,
the
I left
thoughts.
before you did.
Yeah, so wrap my head around the thoughts. So it's just after leaving that and, I think pigeonholing with a start time.
So what's your recommendation?
I mean, I would just list it as cannot operate past 9 PM and at the same time as the daycare. There you go.
You got clean language, Sarah? What is it?
Operations for activities related to the conditional use may not begin before 8 a.m. and must conclude no later than 9 o'clock p.m. That should address all of your timing concerns, because then line item number 3 prevents you from operating the daycare during the exact same time as any events.
Fair enough.
I'm trying, man. I'm
Okay.
firing all cylinders at 9:30 on a Monday.
All right, so I'm going to, by the way, are there any Roswell residents that would like to come address this matter? Okay, good. All right. Let me get back, all right, we'll bring it back to Roswell, to the council. So I'm getting a sense that I think the votes, or sounds like it's good with conditions. You're good with everything but 5, and you're trying to adjudicate and solve for 2, correct? All right. So Sarah, sorry, David, let me get 1 second.
Yeah.
You have a suggestion for 2. What's the suggestion for 2?
Strike the current language for line item number 2 and replace it with operations for activities related to the conditional use of the events facility may not begin before 8 a.m. and must conclude no later than 9 p.m.
Just, what do you think? You're the applicant.
That covers it for all, you're just thinking for all days in general.
All right. So I'm just going to get his opinion. Yes, ma'am, Lee?
Is that every day, or is that just Saturday and Sunday?
All days, because in this situation, line item number 3 precludes them from operating the special events facility in overlap with the primary use of the daycare. So in this case, it would address Councilmember Johnson's concerns of off days that are maybe a Wednesday.
To your point, everybody's clear. Nobody wants them to have the daycare and have the special events going on at the same time, correct? Everybody's on the same page of that. So that one's simple. Your agreement with that, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
Okay. All right. David, yes, sir.
One quick question for Mr. Rogers. Let's say you have an event, a big event that's going to start at 6 p.m., but you need to set up. Would you close your daycare early to?
Well, the solution, the solution there is pretty simple. The playground itself, let's just say we're having an outdoor event in that situation. The playground itself, the daycare, kids can be outside after 5 o'clock. The playground can be shut down. If there's an outdoor event we need to set up or something like that, like the kids are inside, they're in a separate, or we put them to the other building. We have multiple buildings here.
And then that satisfies, like if you wanted to do something on a holiday that you're closed,
That would-
have a birthday
correct.
party, this satisfies that.
Correct.
And you're happy with that.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Council, yes, ma'am?
One question completely unrelated to these recommendations. And this might be more related to your operational license as a daycare, because I realize that you have to maintain state licensure for that. To be clear, alcohol, as it relates to these events, would not be stored on site, I guess during any point in time when there's not an event being held and the daycare is closed.
As I said, there's a separate wing of the school that's completely locked.
So children do not access this facility?
Correct.
Okay,
I mean,
that's
the thing.
what
That's the whole point. It'd be like if you have a Primrose in Brookhaven, there's in a shopping center, the corner can have a daycare on it, and you can't have a bar or anything like next door, but you have a restaurant that's has margaritas or something, like kids can't access it, that type of area. So it's completely separate and locked away.
So there's areas that would be related to the events facility, and any alcohol you may have on site are completely separate and secure from any children in that facility.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay. Yes, sir. Did you, David? No. Alan, anything, sir?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Uh-oh. All right, so any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Will?
Wait.
Yes, ma'am. Lee? Yes, ma'am.
I still have my button on. I just want to say that I really like this business model. I think this fits a need in our community of people that are lacking in seeing other people in the same station of life. I remember, it's been a while, but I remember having a 3- and a 5-year-old, and the church I attended at the time was hot to trot to get me to do more volunteer work at the church, and they wanted me to run the 3-year-old Sunday school class. And I said that would be a no. I was already running like 5 committees at the church, and one of them being a 450-person kid Bible school. So With that, I will say, my response to the lady that asked me was, if you'd like to fill the Sunday school role, you should probably run a campaign called Save the Life of a Mom or Dad of a 3-year-old. Not because they're gonna eat you, but it's a very difficult time of life because they're busy, like they're figuring everything out. So I know I was in a deficit at that time of getting to know other parents, and it all works out. It's not a sob story, but I can appreciate picking up kids at carpool at the end of the day and you hear about Sally, you hear about Jim, but you have no idea who the kid is, who the parents are, and I think that there's a lot of benefit to having something like this where you can hang out with some fellow folks that are in the same space. With that, Mayor, close your ears because I have a concession I would love to ask you, Mr. Rogers. It's about your vehicles parked out front, my friend. I would love to know that you would make a concession and keep them because they look really good, but place them further back on your property so that they're just off the curb. You have a magnificent building there facing Woodstock, and I just personally would like to get them out of sight when they're not in use. I want you to use them. I want you to run around and pick up little people and parents too if you need to get them on there to get whatever you're doing. But I would like to request of you to make a concession for us. Just so that,
Is it because Councilmember Primero's name came up tonight that we are legislating from the dais? Guys, this is really bad. We're not supposed to do this.
I have no regrets bringing it up.
No, but we are adjudicating this issue well beyond the pale. This should have been addressed long before, after the Planning Commission, after 3-on-3s. There should have been an agreement put in place. This is bad governance. And my perspective on it is I usually would push it back because I do not like spending time up here on the dais in an hour's conversation trying to figure out what the solution is and then adding things to it. It is not good governance. I don't want to punish the applicant because this thing makes perfect sense. This is a no-brainer, in my view. This is good for the community, good business. In terms like the alcohol piece, like my gosh, common sense. This guy is not going to put his business at risk by having having minors having access to alcohol. He would be insane. He wouldn't be in business in Roswell. We wouldn't allow him to be in business in Roswell. I'm gonna say 5-minute time limit. Come up with a solution, Will, or this item's getting deferred. All right. Now, you got a special request, so since it's here, since we're already here in the Palermo moment, what is the special request you want from the applicant?
I'll move the buses. Let's move on.
You got it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
All right.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Worthless.
Councilman Palermo probably is watching tonight.
That's the question, he is.
He's cutting a lot of shout-outs tonight.
Shout out.
Hey, so Councilmember Palermo has something to say.
Yes, sir. Councilmember
That
Shelby.
is, it is appropriate for us to have these discussions. It is not always inappropriate. So there are times where we talk about these things, we talk about them in 3-on-3s. This is the only time we get to talk about them together, and so that's why we did that, Kurt.
Ellen, it's not the only time you get to talk about them. You have ample time to talk about this.
The only time the 6 of us can talk about it, the 7 of us can talk about it. So there are times where that's going to be not going to be the case, that we are going to bring up things that you don't want to bring up, or that
I'm telling you, Ellen, if you adjudicate an issue that goes this long, that should be addressed beforehand, I'm going to just defer it when you're not going to hear
we
it.
can defer it.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, that,
Go.
if it's a philosophical issue that deserves great policy and debate, I'm in. I'm in. These are
We're
not
sitting here talking, you brought up number 5, my friend.
I did not bring up number 5. I'm sitting here quietly, they're just trying to. All right, thank you, sir. Okay, anything else, sir? All right, you got your thing done on the parking. You're good. Councilman Worthley.
Okay. So, Jeannie, this is how I have it. All right, we're talking about going with the Planning Commission's recommendations as is for number 1, 3, 4, striking 5, and then making an adjustment to number 2. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
With the language that's.
And then I've got this language, yes.
Okay.
So is this your motion?
Yeah, we
May
got.
I ask you to
Please.
add one thing? When you mentioned
of the special events facility, also add and outdoor recreation.
Which, okay. Absolutely, we'll do that.
Too much?
No.
Outdoor recreation space?
Yes, just because they are both conditional uses that are being requested. I feel like that covers the bases.
Okay. Here we go. Everybody ready? All right. Motion to approve 2024. Motion to approve 2024-2512, 11-510 Woodstock Road, conditional use to UDC Section 9.5, commercial uses for indoor recreation with special events facility and outdoor recreation, to go along with the Planning Commission recommendations of number 1, number 3, number 4, striking number 5, and then editing number 2 to read operations for activities related to the conditional use of the events facility and outdoor recreation space may not begin before 8 a.m. and must conclude no later than 9 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor Worthley, for that motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Johnson. All understand the motion in front of them with the adjustments? Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion made by Councilor Worthley and seconded by David Johnson, please raise your hands. All opposed? Let the record show that the motion passes 5-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. At this time, the next item on the agenda is the city attorney's report. Mr. Davidson, would you read your item, please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion for closure? Motion for closure by David Johnson. Is there a second for closure? Second by William Worthland. All in favor of closure, please raise your hands. Let the record state that we have moved in closure. All unanimously, thank you very much. Being that there are no other items, this mayor and council meeting of September 9th, 2024 is adjourned. Thank you very much.